All right, good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting. Could you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting agenda? Is there a second? Ms. Downey, any discussion on the meeting agenda? Joe, is there anything you wanted to, you don't want to amend the meeting agenda? You're good. Okay, thank you. All right, hearing no discussion on the meeting agenda, in favor? Thank you, that passes 7-0. Mr. Sheriff. And we will move on to the school welcome. Trish McGuire. Oh, sorry, one more item before you're coming over. Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda? I'm so excited to hear from Julian Curtis. Motion to approve the consent agenda, Ms. Hirsch. Is there a second? Ms. Stowe? Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Ms. Olson? All right, that also passes 7-0. Thank you. Now, Ms. McGuire, to welcome us to JC.
Good evening, Chairman Bernstein, all board members, and a special welcome to our new board members, Superintendent Dr. Tony Jones, members of the Executive Cabinet, and the school community. I am Trish McGuire, principal of Julian Curtis, and I welcome all of you to our school on the last meeting of the calendar year and the week before our holiday break. We at Julian Curtis are trying to brighten your evening with a little holiday spirit tonight. I hope you enjoyed the music played by Central Middle School 6th grader and JC alum Sylvester Pecora. Thank you, Sylvester, for brightening our evening with your talents. Our student council, comprised of 14 elected promising young individuals, recently learned a little bit of what you, the Board of Education, does and how the roles of the student council might be similar to that of the Board of Education. Both boards serve our schools. We have co-presidents, grade level representatives, and classroom representatives all working to make our school a better place to learn. They learned a little about your work and have taken the time to thank you for your efforts as well as wish you a happy holiday. There is a personal note on the table for each of you. We couldn't let the evening pass without a last spotlight on our work completed with the Inside Out project and the French international street artist, JR. Julian Curtis participated in this special project that helped teach our students about their individuality as well as their value as a member of our Julian Curtis international community. This project was proposed by international photographer, Mr. Alexander Korik, parent of Zoe Korik, who is now a student at Central Middle School. The portraits around were taken of the oldest child representing each country here at Julian Curtis, and that was 67 countries this year. The project was a true labor of love for our Inside Out committee, and 6 months of planning and preparation came together in a breathtaking display. We hope you have a chance to view the brief video located on the monitor outside the gym. Our main goal in completing this project was to teach the children about the culture within us and capture images that reflect the diversity of our Julian Curtis community. There were 3 elements embedded in this school project, the culture within us, but the most important was the element of respect. Respect for life, respect for others, and respect for each other's differences. We continue to take pride in our cultural and economic diversity here at Julian Curtis, and we are proud to report that 73 of our 281 students choose to attend Julian Curtis as magnet students. We are also one of 2 elementary schools in the district participating in a parent engagement initiative, which is an area of focus of the district's strategic plan and an area of a needed improvement in the schools. Parent engagement is a critical component of school and student success. Julian Curtis is engaging in a plan supported by the Greenwich Alliance and led by consultant Patty Jomo. Our fall plans included staff development for teachers and a parent workshop with information on how to be an engaged participant in the parent-teacher conferences. We are just now reviewing results of both parent and staff surveys, but the initial results are overwhelmingly positive. When we return from holiday break, we will finalize our plans for new student-led conferences aligned with the second report card in March. We scored above the 80th percentile in family engagement on our 2019 Panorama survey, and we are hoping to improve those results in 2020 as we recognize the importance of this parent-school relationship for school success. Our academic achievement at Julian Curtis is focused on growth, and we are continually analyzing student data to target personal growth for students. At the end of 18-19, 79% of our students in grades 1 through 5 made expected to high growth in math, and 75% of our students in grades 1 through 5 made expected to high growth in reading. We were most proud of our students in grades 3 through 5, where 86% of our students made expected to high growth in English language arts, with an average of 28% making high growth. High growth is our target, and we continue to reflect and refine our instruction to support our students in making the high growth standard. We would like to thank the board for the approval of the funding for our feasibility study this year. We are in the process of working on these plans, and we look forward to choosing an architect and moving forward on the much-needed renovations for our beloved building. We hope you will support the superintendent's proposed budget tonight so that we can move forward to the next steps in the process. Before departing, I would like to congratulate those being recognized tonight: the 2020 National Merit Scholarship Honorees, the Red Ribbon Pass Program Award, and congratulations to my colleague Bonnie O'Regan on the achievement of being recognized as a 2019 NAGC Gifted Coordinator. And last, but certainly not least, congratulations to Principal Angela Schmidt and the staff at North Miamis for being recognized as a Blue Ribbon School. Thank you for being with us this evening. Happy holidays and all the best for a great 2020.
All right, so next up is the recognition portion of our program. I take it some of you are here for that. What I'd ask is that you remain until all of the recognitions are done. Once we're done that, we'll let you know, and if you want to stay, you're more than welcome to, especially the students. Your student government leaders speak, but otherwise you're free to go after this. So let's just move over that way. The first is the 2020 National Merit Scholarship Program honorees, Ms. Nadell.
Good evening. On behalf of the faculty and staff of Greenwich High School, we are pleased to have this opportunity to honor the accomplishments of this select group of Greenwich High School seniors. The mission of the National Merit Scholarship Corporation is to recognize the academically talented students of the United States. Our semifinalists are an especially strong candidate pool, and it is likely they will all be named finalists later on this school year. We appreciate the hard work and dedication to excellence all of these students have exhibited as members of the Greenwich High School community, and we appreciate that they bring welcome and positive recognition to our school, our district, and to the town of Greenwich. I'm going to call your names, students, and please come up and receive your certificate. I just want to urge caution that you do not trip over that wire there. Yes. Yeah. Might be, yes, I can. Get ourselves organized here. Sorry about that. I'm going to call you in group order by area of accomplishment. The first we have is our group of semifinalists, and the first person is Julia Blank. Next we have Cynthia Chen. Niall Garg. Lucas Gazianis. Phoebe Harsh. Tobin Hirsch. Timothy Kim. Melanie Leguizamon. Katie Piotrowski. Margaret Tone. Kira Wang. Zachary Wang. Melissa Wu. Kyle Zhang. Next, we have our commended students. Stanley Araki. Alexander Bine. Mark Bourgeois. Emma Burstener. Sarah Craver. Thomas Fenaroli. Jessica Franco. Joshua Fruman. Victoria Fu. Daniel Gove. Keon Jane. Matthew Jester. Akshay Joglar. Cole Keisher. Elliot Kim. Nathan King. Thomas Lewis. Henry McGannon. Matthew Myers. William Owens. Emil Perdue. And Emily Rufiak. Andres Rue. Shun Sakai. Brennan Scarell. Nithya Shenoy. Justin Speaker. Peter Stewart. Matthew Sullivan. Amelia Sabo. Isabel Wilson. And now we have our National Hispanic Scholars, Nicholas Arroyo, Dylan Camacho, Jessica Franco, Joshua Fruman, Melanie Leguizman, Nicole Manrique, Kate Ochoa, William Owens, Kiara Rizzola, and Andres Rue. And these are our National Merit Scholarship winners. Congratulations. The most in Connecticut, public or private.
Very much. It's a pretty impressive group of kids. Next up is the 2019 NAGC Gifted Coordinator Award winner. So Irene, if you want to come on down. Yeah, no, we will. You may want to give them a minute.
Do I have to say this?
You don't have to say that. Just give it a minute.
Good evening. Tonight we have the opportunity to recognize Ms. Bonnie O'Regan, our Advanced Learning Facilitator for Greenwich Public Schools, and her achievement in receiving the Gifted Coordinator Award from NAGC, the National Association for Gifted Children. Bonnie, won't you join me, please? The Gifted Coordinator Award is presented annually to administrators who have made significant contributions to gifted children in their school districts by developing gifted programs, using research-based methods to identify students, providing ongoing professional development for teachers on the needs of gifted children and advocating for these children in the district and the community. One of 3 administrators nationwide were awarded this award, and our Bonnie, our coordinator, received this award. Bonnie has worked as a Greenwich educator for 20 years, and the moment you meet her, you understand how deep her passion for providing optimal learning opportunities for any child. She works tirelessly to provide the best service and learning experiences for all. I'm sure you will agree when I say that we are proud of you, Bonnie, and what this award stands for and means for all of us in Greenwich Public Schools. Congratulations.
So next up is the 2019 Connecticut Red Ribbon Pass Program Award. Dr. Carolyn.
Good evening. Physical fitness is essential to the development of healthy and productive students and is an important component of Connecticut's overall education goals. The Red Ribbon Physically Active School System Program Award provides recognition to schools and districts that embrace guidance from the Physical Guidelines for America, the 3rd edition. In quotes, when children are physically active for at least 60 minutes or more on a daily basis, benefits in health and academic performance have been reported. Schools can assist students in meeting this goal by incorporating opportunities for physical activity throughout the school day and across all grade levels. Greenwich is one of 2 districts to be recognized by the State Department of Education with the Red Ribbon Pass Program Award. ISD is recognized as the school where physical fitness is an essential element of school success. A physically active school system provides opportunities for all students to be active throughout the school day. Please join me in recognizing ISD, Terry Rickey and Eugene Matejek, Principal, their school community, and Program Coordinator of Physical Education, Health, and Family and Consumer Science, Jeremy Boland, for their commitment to provide students opportunities to be physically active throughout the school days. Congratulations.
Last but not least, the 2019 National Blue Ribbon School. Take it away. Thank you.
So I would like to invite up to the front of the room the principal and the assistant principal of North Miana School, Angela Schmidt and Sarah Ubachowski. And I also would like to invite the staff of North Mianas that is here this evening to support this award. Please come up too. So, being designated a National Blue Ribbon School is powerful. As one principal stated, the National Blue Ribbon Program begins a process you cannot stop. We consistently continue to use data to set goals with the teachers and the students to adapt teaching and learning to support every child. All of the teachers, students, and administrators are held to high standards. There is a mutual respect and trust running deep in our school culture. Public schools are nominated by the chief state school officers of all 50 states, the District of Columbia, U.S. territories, Department of Defense Education Activity, and the Bureau of Indian Education. Every National Blue Ribbon school is exemplary. It gives me great pleasure to recognize North Miami School and as one of 4 Connecticut schools to be recognized for the 2019-2020 National Blue Ribbon School. And I also have the plaque that was awarded to Angela when we went to the National Blue Ribbon Conference in DC.
Thank you. Had a little bit of success in everything we do. Next up is our public hearing, so we'll start with the GHS student government.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and members of the community. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lucas Gazianis, the senior class president of Greenwich High School. So let me first share some prominent items on our class agenda, and then I'll broaden into the entirety of student government and update you on our subcommittees. So coming up on Saturday, January 11th, is a class of 2020 fundraiser at Chipotle in Riverside. You don't need to be in high school to participate. Just head to Chipotle on East Putnam Avenue between 4 and 8 p.m. and mention the class of 2020 before you pay for your food. It's a wonderful way for the community to support our class and our expenditures this year, which will include subsidizing senior prom and purchasing a memorable class gift. Once again, mention our class before you pay for your food. So now, a dedicated team is in the process of developing our standing room only senior show, which will take place on March 5th and 6th. We've already decided on a theme, which is 2020 vision. It's brilliant. So additionally, we're trying to devise strategies we can use to attract as many participants as possible within our class, and I'm confident that we can muster an improvement in student engagement from recent years. I'll definitely keep you updated on how the show is moving along, but for now, please start spreading the word and getting your friends, children, and students interested in participating once SRO comes around. In terms of our subcommittee update, student government just last week voted overwhelmingly in favor of a policy proposal brought forward by a junior that seeks to create an entire day where students can volunteer to play unified sports with fellow athletes. The day, which would resemble a field day, would also include an educational session to make sure that all volunteers are fully equipped to handle their responsibilities, and so that more people in the community will understand what exactly it means to have special needs. So now that we've approved that proposal, its author will work with our administrators to try and make the event happen, which I will certainly update you on. So as we head into holiday break, our woes about college eased by Greenwich High's first Winter Spirit Week, I encourage everyone in my class who's listening, so many of them, to push through what may be an extraordinarily busy and stressful time. We will emerge out of the other end as smarter, wiser, and most importantly, done with our applications. Thank you, and please welcome Student Body President Zane Cotter.
Well, thank you very much, Lucas. Mr. Chairman, Dr. Jones, members of the board, administrators, parents, cabinet, Toby, and renowned citizens of Greenwich, good evening and welcome. I am Zane Cotter, the student body president of Greenwich High School, and unfortunately, in line with my last speech, I want to begin by grieving the loss of our dearest friend, Luke Myers, who passed away several weeks ago after a 20-month-long battle with glioblastoma, a very severe form of brain cancer. And while I cannot say that I knew Luke extremely well, we did both do Model UN together, and I got to experience his passion for the environment firsthand during our conferences and club meetings. I also had the experience of watching Luke voluntarily come and spend one of his free blocks last year with my AP biology class because he was simply interested in what the AP students were learning about and wanted to broaden his academic horizons and sate his intellectual curiosity. At the last meeting, Lucas told you about the Live Like Luke beach cleanup that was hosted in his honor. And I think that this best exemplifies his devotion to the community and the town. And I truly believe that we, as members of not just the Greenwich community, but the global community, can learn a lot from the way Luke emphasized the importance of the community over the needs of the individual. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a moment of silence to honor Luke and his impact on the world. Thank you. Christ Church will be holding a memorial service this Saturday at 2 p.m. in honor of Luke, if anyone is interested. Ladies and gentlemen, I have begun to notice a massive youth movement championing environmental reform in response to climate change. And understanding that this was a big issue, I decided this year to take environmental science because I was intrigued by what I thought the course could teach me. And I realize now that the best part about taking that class was the fact that I could compare and contrast that environmentalist point of view that it introduced with the profit-maximizing point of view that I learned about in AP Economics to create a more well-rounded perspective capable of introducing ideas that benefited both the environment and the economy. And what I'm getting at, I suppose, is that we collectively need to and can shift the narrative away from the hyperpolarizing extremes of pro-environment versus pro-economy by having students engage in classroom content that embraces a multidisciplinary approach to create innovative solutions to current modern-day problems. Imagine a class that would combine concepts from economics and environmental science as an example to task students with creating public policy that benefits both small farming businesses and sustainable agriculture practices. That's just one example of a multidisciplinary class that could and should be created for students to gain multiple perspectives on an issue so that their solutions are both constructive and realistic. My friends, our country has a serious lack of perspectives problem that lends itself to division. And it's the same kind of division that results in toxic partisanship, global conflict, and ageist contempt. Many young people look to the older generations and believe that they have abandoned us. But I think that if we are going to look towards a more unified future, the onus is on all of us to have a multidisciplinary perspective. We cannot have young politicians who do not understand the economy, or older economists who do not understand ethics and the environment. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard and flourish, lest we cling to preconception and perish. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next up, Carol Sutton for the GEA.
Good evening, Principal McGuire, Chairman Bernstein, and board members, Dr. Jones, members of the cabinet, and members of the community. My name is Carol Sutton, and on behalf of 900 members of the Greenwich Education Association, I'd like to welcome you to this meeting and also extend our best wishes for a joyous holiday season and a happy new year. I'd like to offer GEA's congratulations to all of this year's honorees, those that are left, and a special congratulations to Bonnie O'Regan, who is part of our bargaining unit, and we're very proud of what she's done for the ALP program. Also, welcome to Mr. O'Keefe to your first board meeting, and we look forward to working with you as well. So at this time of year, if you've been around the schools, you can sense the excitement that you see everywhere. Teachers are doing their best to keep the lid on, to keep everybody productive until the end of the day tomorrow. And a few ice storms and a little bit of snow squall here or there really keeps things exciting and fun. So often the students like to tell us what they've been up to, and so it's a tradition, I guess, you may not know it, but I sort of let you know in December what we've been up to, at least since Thanksgiving break, which was only 3 weeks ago. So one project that everyone in the Greenwich staff community is very proud of is the Holiday Bear project. And Holiday Bear is a project where teachers and staff members and administrators from every school contribute gifts, gift cards, really to make sure that all of our students, including the most needy, have packages upon packages to open up in a few days. And this year we took care of about almost 300 students, and that's quite amazing, and we're very proud of that. My little car has been filled to the brim several times, kind of like the Grinch's sleigh, but not the bad way, you know, just things hanging out. Our teachers and our parents have also been involved in parent conferences. And while this is something that creates a very long day in many cases, we know that those personal connections make such a difference to everyone involved, especially to our students, to have that connection. You may have been lucky enough to go to an orchestra concert, a band concert, a choral concert. The teachers, whether they are leading those, conducting them, or simply enjoying the music, have contributed greatly to making those things happen. And it's really important for us to all remember that the arts, not just the performing arts, but the visual arts, are extremely important to all of our developing children. We've also been helping the students get ready for their mid-year exams. Those are coming up soon after break. Teachers have literally been giving blood at GHS and the blood drive. We've been supporting students in everything they do. That's all since 3 weeks ago or so. And all that regular teaching, regular learning, and preparing for their own family holidays. So it's no wonder everyone's really looking forward to a break, including myself. So this evening you'll take action on the capital and operating budgets for 2020-21. We know that you have scrutinized every line and weighed each expenditure against its potential benefit for our students and their families. We're grateful that the expenditure for a more secure entry to Greenwich High School is in this proposal. As you know, last week was the anniversary of Sandy Hook, which is always a sobering event. We're also grateful for the proposed expenditure to take this very building, Julian Curtis, farther down the road to the 21st century. And we're hopeful that the decrease in expenditure to Old Greenwich doesn't slow down its similar trajectory. So thank you for your hard work on the budget and all the work you did this year. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and we're looking forward to a good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Next up, PTA Council, Cricket Diamond.
Good evening, Superintendent Jones, Chairman Bernstein, Principal McGuire, members of the board, cabinet, and community. My name is Cricket Diamond, President of PTA Council. In the rush of the holiday season, when there is often so much more to do than there is time to do it in, it is helpful to pause, to stop, and to acknowledge what we are grateful for and what is truly important. We thank each of the members of the board and of the administration alike on behalf of all the children of Greenwich for working your hardest to bring continued excellence to our district. We celebrate our teachers and coaches who inspire students every day, and we celebrate our students who come to school ready to learn, achieve, and grow. We appreciate the focus on increasing achievement for all students so that every child has the opportunity to flourish, to achieve his or her own personal best. We value your role in enabling the best learning to happen, from addressing staffing insufficiencies at Eastern Middle School and class sizes at Greenwich High School, to curating the best ideas and sharing them across the district, to spotlighting notable achievements like North Mianis's Blue Ribbon Distinction, to providing an array of enrichment, arts, and extracurricular opportunities, to building community and ensuring safety. We are thankful for your support and leadership. PTAs have been partners in many of these 2019 accomplishments and achievements.
As we round the corner to 2020, we look forward to another year of achievement and to continuing to identify opportunities for improvement. One very significant opportunity is upcoming, the strategic planning process. Parents would love to be involved in the process. We would appreciate the opportunity to have input through community forums and focus groups. Turning now to the fiscal year 2021 operating and capital budgets, Council supports the budgets as submitted. We appreciate Dr. Jones's work to find areas to cut which would have a minimal impact on the classroom and learning. We stand behind the feasibility studies at Greenwich High School and Old Greenwich so that planning for urgently needed upgrades will not be delayed. Regarding Cardinal Stadium, Greenwich High School PTA and Council have consistently advocated for restrooms, changing facilities, and ADA accessibility for the stadium, bleachers, and press box. We also are advocating for a secondary egress and exit to the Greenwich High School campus, which will improve traffic flow, increase security, and life safety for students and surrounding neighbors. We look forward to the discussion this evening. We see only upside for our district, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you for your continued leadership. We wish you all happy holidays, a healthy and rejuvenating winter break, and a wonderful new year.
Thank you very much. All right, next up is our community comments. We've got several speakers signed up. You get 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you, it's the Christmas season. Be kind. If somebody said something that you were already going to say, it's okay to get up and say, me too. And we'll move on to the next speaker because we do have our agenda tonight. So the first speaker that signed up is Carolyn Peterson.
Hello, my name is Carolyn Peterson, and I'm the co-president of the PTA at Old Greenwich School. I'm speaking to you on behalf of our PTA in order to express our support of the budget allocation to our school's design study for renovation expansion in the Board of Ed's 2020-2021 capital budget as guided by the 15-year facilities master plan, which prioritizes safety, security, and accessibility projects. As you are aware, Old Greenwich School was built in 1902. It is the oldest building in the district. Today, the structure is not ADA compliant. It also presents serious safety issues as well as impediments to learning. The school is spread out across 5 floors plus a ramp. As a result, the building is not accessible to handicapped students, teachers, parents, and other community members. In instances when students have become injured during the academic year, it is not uncommon for a member of staff to have to carry that student up and down the stairs. This is an obvious liability. Because of the building's current configuration, our nurse and administrative offices cannot be centrally located. Their distance from many classrooms is a safety issue. Students and staff lose precious instructional time because of the time they spend navigating the building. Our front exterior staircase is a safety hazard. The concrete is flaking and is patched every year, but is still crumbling. Our back staircase is in a constant state of disrepair, even missing steps at times, posing major tripping hazards. Given its open presence in town and lack of fencing or security, the additional wing and enclosed and protected courtyard under consideration would address obvious capacity and safety issues. Due to the age of the current construction, repairs, upgrades cannot be undertaken by the facilities department for fear of uncovering issues in the walls. As an example, this means satisfactory water fountains are not available on all levels to the students or staff, including all children in grades 3 through 5. The renovation plan would also take into consideration mitigation of the flooding that is taking place in our lowest levels due to the rising water table in Old Greenwich. It would be very disruptive to Greenwich should our school be closed due to mold, as happened to our neighbors in Stamford. Lastly, the school is utilized by the town of Greenwich as a polling station, but has to rely on temporary infrastructure to allow for citizens to enter the building. Old Greenwich School is a historic building that is a showpiece for our town. Our community needs and deserves an accessible, safe building that can serve all students regardless of their physical abilities and welcome all members of our community. We thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, next up is Julie Deschamps, followed by Nicole Chazen.
Good evening. I'm Julie Deschamps, a member of the Food Services Committee and former Green Schools Chair. I'm joined by Carolyn Peterson, Nicole Chazen, and Elise Diamond Fields to read the letter sent to the board yesterday to the public, Dr. Jones, and the Board of Ed. First, we are thankful to the board for removing styrofoam from the cafeterias and for supporting a transition from disposable wares to reusables. This is the right example to set for our children. It's the responsible choice for our environment, and it's the fiscally responsible decision. We recognize that the line item for reusable wares and dishwashers is but a fraction of their overall budget, but it's essential to select the most sustainable and fiscally responsible plan, as Mr. Schur pointed out. It is important not to make a short-sighted decision that may help accomplish the short-term goal of holding budget increases within 2%, but ultimately will cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars more in the long term. That is fiscally irresponsible. The discussion at the last budget meeting between the board and Dr. Jones was unfortunately full of misconceptions and disinformation about the central dishwasher proposal, which was supposed to be shared in advance with the board members, but was not. We have since reached out to the members who had questions and were not informed. However, we would like to address some of the concerns and inaccuracies now. Why did the Food Services Committee propose the centralized dishwasher program? At present, it seems from the last Board of Ed meeting that Superintendent Jones and Chairman Bernstein are advocating for the original proposal to install individual dishwashers in each school. Unfortunately, it came to the Food Services Committee's attention that this plan was not adequately researched and assessed by the former Food Services manager, and it could cost the district significantly more in capital and operating expenses than initially anticipated without a successful outcome. There are many unknowns that have not been sufficiently addressed with this proposal, including space limitations, asbestos remediation, and additional labor required, ensuring additional operating costs that were not originally accounted for. In response to these challenges, the Food Services Committee delved a bit deeper and came up with an alternative solution. The committee has recommended the proposal for a central dishwasher system, determining that it is the most fiscally responsible, most sustainable, and the one that has the greatest guarantee of success.
30 seconds.
This plan was not made in haste, as has been suggested, but only after extensive research, through investigation, and in consultation with the Board of Health, EBP Supply, and other school districts. As a board, you asked for our input. We, as a committee, have done our homework and feel confident with the proposal before you. Thank you.
So Nicole Chazen, followed by Alyssa Diamond Fields.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Chazen, and I'm a parent at North Street School. And I would like to address a few more questions that I guess came up in previous meetings. What is the most fiscally responsible plan? The capital costs of the individual dishwasher proposal were assessed at about $313,000. These capital expenses already exceed the $250K requested, and the figure is likely to increase as dishwashers are introduced building by building due to potential issues like renovations and asbestos remediation. This plan is a Pandora's box, and costs could skyrocket. Further, this plan is not without operating expenses, as some have assumed. Additional labor will be necessary to clean the reusable wares. Because of this problem, the committee looked at other options and concluded the central dishwasher plan was a more cost-effective and sustainable program. The capital costs of the central dishwasher plan are less than a third of the individual washer plan, $87,000 versus at least $313,000. This proposal includes operating expenses, but they are largely offset by savings from purchasing and disposal, netting only $19K, an amount a board member called peanuts. The bulk of the operating expenses derive from part-time monitors who are critical to the success of the program and fulfill multiple roles to assure compliance with health department regulations, to prevent loss, and to supervise waste reduction procedures. further saving money and resources. Will the central dishwasher system increase pollution? Our food services currently operates as a centralized system working out of the high school. Everyday school lunches are prepared and processed at GHS. From there, lunches are transported to each of the K-8 schools to be heated and plated. Food Services has 2 trucks that do this daily. One heads to the east side of town and the other to the west side of town. When done delivering the food, the trucks head back to the high school. As proposed, the clean trays would be transported in these same trucks that are already scheduled for morning food deliveries to K-8 schools. During food delivery, the sanitized trays would be dropped off and used trays picked up. No further vehicles will be necessary, and additional pollution will not be generated or additional transportation or fuel costs incurred from this operation. None of that. We have confirmed that there is enough room on the trucks to carry the trays, that this is acceptable to the Board of Health, and that this should not provide any additional labor costs or raise issues within the current labor contracts. Since the trays are transported in insulated carriers with wheels, there is no lifting or carrying to be done by the drivers. Thank you.
Alyssa Diamond Fields, followed by Carolyn Peterson.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Alyssa Diamond Fields. I'm a parent here at Julian Curtis, and as well as a member of the Menu Planning Committee. I'd like to continue to address these questions. One of the questions, are there concerns if the used trays are transported in the same truck as food? No, the trays will be rinsed to remove food residue and then bagged and packaged in insulated carriers for transport in accordance with the Health Department guidelines. Again, we've confirmed that this is acceptable to the Greenwich Board of Health. What role would the monitors play in the success of the central dishwasher plan? The Food Service Committee strongly recommends the hiring of part-time monitors to secure the success of this program. The monitors have several responsibilities to ensure regulatory compliance, maximize waste reduction, and save money, and address 4 needs that are currently sorely lacking and understaffed in the Greenwich Public School lunchrooms. First, they will rinse and prepare these durable wares for transport in accordance with Greenwich Health Department regulations. Second, the monitors will oversee sorting to minimize loss of utensils and trays and to maximize waste reduction, which could save the town approximately $9,000 in sorted and solid waste disposal costs. Currently, this is being done by parent volunteers in schools that are able to provide this function, but some schools don't have this luxury, and in such cases, waste reduction is not being done or is not successful. In reality, using parent volunteers to implement waste reduction in schools is not a long-term viable option, and honestly, it's not fair to assume that parents should bear this time-consuming endeavor. Third, the role will include supervision of food share tables to comply with state guidelines, which we are looking to implement in all schools for students who can benefit from such sharing tables. Fourth, the monitors will also transport food scraps to outdoor bins and oversee compost, since the custodians do not move the collected scraps per their union contract. Despite a grant of $20,000 from Connecticut DEP to construct and install the outdoor compost bins, the majority of the bins sit unused because of this contract issue. Dr. Jones also noted concerns about hiring and retention of additional staffing, especially monitors. It might be worth assessing the retention of the existing cafeteria monitors, as many have been in their positions for 5 to 10 years. This plan could further be used to relieve pressure of hiring, as existing monitors and food service staff could temporarily step in if need be, if a monitor was absent.
Carolyn Pearson.
Good evening, I'm Carolyn Peterson and I'm a member of the Food Services Committee, and I will now address the final questions. Is there sufficient space in every school kitchen to house a commercial dishwasher? There are 7 school kitchens identified with space limitations that may not accommodate dishwashers. If this is the case, then what do we do? Do we then install a central dishwasher? This hybrid approach suggested at the last budget meeting does not make practical or, more importantly, financial sense. If we eventually will have to move to a centralized system to accommodate the schools that cannot house a commercial dishwasher, why not do that from the start and save hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital costs? Can the food service employees clean wares during existing lunch hours under the individual dishwasher plan? During the pilot at New Lebanon School, the 3 food service employees were able to wash the trays during regular hours. However, There are 8 elementary schools that have staffs of only 2 workers. These employees will need to work extra hours to clean the durable wares, adding about $48,000 to operating expenses annually. How can operating costs be reduced if the centralized dishwasher proposal is selected? The committee recommendation is to implement the centralized plan with the additional monitors, since we believe this is the way to ensure success of the program and address unmet needs in the district, as noted earlier. However, we recognize that for some of the board, the continued operating cost of $19,000 a year to the budget may be a hurdle to the approval of the centralized plan. As such, we would urge you to, at a minimum, approve the centralized dishwasher system without the additional monitors, since it is still the most cost-effective and sustainable proposal. The centralized dishwasher program could be piloted with existing staff and monitors, taking on the responsibility of handling the reusable trays solely. There may be an additional of $48,000 of operating costs to address the staffing needs, but it is less than the operating cost of the $86,000 with the new monitors. In conclusion, any decision requiring capital expenditures and additional operating costs should be carefully considered, and priorities must be made. Most of our town leaders have made the environment a priority for Greenwich. Implementing reusable wares is a step in cementing such a commitment and making Greenwich a leader in our country and in our state. Further, most, if not all, of our town leaders have run on a fiscally responsible platform. The centralized dishwashing proposal is the most cost-effective proposal presented, and unlike the individual plan, it ensures that continued savings to our town and our Board of Education budget over the long run. Should you have any time? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the next speaker is Claire Kilgallen, followed by Sophia Cady and Lance Large.
Good evening, Superintendent, members of the board, members of the cabinet. I just wanted to extemp on this point about Old Greenwich and support their move to get this moving forward on the feasibility for Old Greenwich. For people who are in the audience who aren't aware, Old Greenwich, Riverside, and JC should have been put together, and the board last year had the unenviable position of having to kowtow to the BET, and therefore only JC has moved forward in feasibility. So the work, if we're talking about fiscal responsibility, the work that has been paid for by experts in the field who made recommendations based upon the board's charge and their expertise has been put to the wayside because of the BET. I think we should be moving ahead with all the recommendations, and the value proposition there is apparent. So now I'll go into my planned comments. I'm from the New Lebanon PTA. I'm a co-president. I speak in support of the superintendent's proposed budget. Over the years, additions such as increased security, mental health services, increasing curriculum standards have pressured the budget. So think about a budget from 10 years ago and what goes into a budget today. There are huge additions that were not even contemplated then. This makes creating a budget nearly impossible. The efficiencies have been squeezed, as you've heard before, and the impacts now are gonna, come down to the wire. Programs, students. Personally, I'm concerned about the reduction in materials. What will that look like? These items are still needed, and how will these needs be satisfied? The GHS security upgrade plan for the entry is worth every penny. The return on investment is incalculable, and for the BET to not support that is beyond thinking, The educational program should not be cut because of outside pressures like statutory requirements, like the state ban on styrofoam, ADA compliance, and security. Costs driven by these, as well as other unanticipated regulatory requirements, should be exceptions carved out of the BET budget guidelines. Bottom line, how can you maintain a level services budget when you are pressured with all of these requirements? Safety, security should not be beholden to guidelines. I thank you for your service as you deliberate. Please act in the best interest of our students, over 9,000 of them. You know the value proposition of Greenwich, the fundamental value Greenwich Public Schools brings to every resident and homeowner. Please support a budget that is true to your charge, excellence in education, in safe and secure facilities. Thank you.
Time.
Thank you. All right, so next up are Sophia, Katie, and Lance Large, followed by Alan Gunsberg.
Hi everyone, I'm Sophia Large. I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, Abby Large, who could not be here sadly today to speak in front of you. I stand before you not just as a taxpayer and parent, but as a financial planner who runs successful practice for the past 25 years. Qualified to look pragmatically at our fiscal and responsible obligation to our time and our students. More importantly, as a food service committee member for the past 5 years, I've gone under the hood to crunch the numbers. Understand our health department needs, labor contracts, infrastructure, exam process, and successful sustainability of both options. A ton of work went into pragmatic fiscal facts about our food service and label processes, used to determine the most viable option for our future. The committee met with every constituent, crossed every T, and dotted every I with regard to the labor, materials, process, maintenance, sustainability, and the use and responsibility of our taxpayer dollars. The comments put forward thus far indicate the data has not been read or understood. As representatives of our schools, this is deeply concerning. You're over budget looking for ways to be efficient. We've given one on a silver platter. This is much bigger than just dishwashers. This is about our blueprint in town, our ecosystem, our leadership, and our bottom line going forward. This decision affects everyone's tax dollars and most town departments. Respect the committee's work, choose the recommendation to capitalize a system already put in place, and vote for the centralized system. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice job, Sophia. All right, next up is Alan Gunsberg. That's the last speaker that signed up for an agenda or non-agenda item. If there are people who'd like to address the board on an agenda or non-agenda item, I'd ask you to just stand to the side so we can keep this moving. Thank you. With that, take it away, Alan.
Good evening. I come before you tonight as a member of the Greenwich Lions and the coordinator of the Greenwich Lions Kidside program. We started doing vision screening in the beginning of October, and we finished just recently. This is our 4th year doing vision screening and our 3rd year doing every single school in the town of Greenwich. We handle 1st, 4th, and 5th grade, and we do pre-Ks in the schools that have one. We want to thank Mary Keller. We want to thank all the nurses in town who opened the school up to us, the principals, the teachers who allowed us to check the vision of their children. Just so we have it down, we tested 2,148 students. There was a 9% referral rate, and the Greenwich Lions put 341 and a half total Lion volunteer hours in this project. So I have a spreadsheet. I can email you this if you need, but here is the information, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your service. All right, is there anybody else that wishes to address the board on an agenda or non-agenda item? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to our monthly reports, starting with the superintendent.
Okay, I just have a couple of items tonight. First, I want to wish everybody an early, wonderful break, and just say how much we appreciate our staff and our teachers, our administrators, who have had a lot of hard work this fall, and I know they're looking forward to a great rest. I want to say thank you especially, and someone mentioned it earlier, to our music program. This time of the year is absolutely, it starts something every night of the week, and they have just done a phenomenal job. I was at Old Greenwich last week for the ABC play, which was the cutest thing ever to watch kindergartners. Hamilton Avenue Field is on track. I just want to mention that because I know that that's an important project that has taken quite a while, and we have an RFP that's going out there. So again, that is on track. Our NGSS results finally came out from the state officially, and so we will be reporting those to the board in the future. And we're very proud of our scores and, you know, our leader in the state in NGSS. So we did very, very well. I also want to mention that January 21st is an election day for the replacement Fred Camilla's position. However, we are in school. We have messaged staff and parents, and that is in working with the election board and also the police to make sure everybody feels comfortable with that. And everybody does, because it's only a third of the Greenwich voters. It's quite a small turnout, and it's fewer sites. It's only 8 sites. And as an additional just layer of security, the police are going to put a person at each polling station for the time that we're in school, so we feel comfortable with that. I also just want to say a hearty welcome to Sean O'Keefe. I'm delighted that we actually have somebody sitting over there this month, so welcome to Sean in his first official meeting. Thank you.
I do want to point out Laura White, who is our district arts coordinator, is basically at every concert, every night of the week. She's usually hiding. They always call her name. She puts her head down and is in the back, but she's basically, she's there and ever present. Ms. Stowe.
Tony, sorry to bring this up because I know we didn't mention it, but hearing a lot from parents this week about this middle school assessment that was added. Wasn't something we approved, and then there seemed to be a lot of issues and serious technical difficulties, and now it's being implemented differently at the middle schools. Can we talk a little bit about that?
I can. I've had quite a few questions about it, and I think, you know, part of the hiccup was the way the assessment was messaged, that it was it sounded by the note like it was a high-stakes assessment. This is an assessment that, from my understanding, and Ms. Parisi can jump in and correct me if I say something wrong, was kind of a grassroots from the teachers wanting to do an actual, just a writing assessment as part of it's part of their end of unit, and having the same writing prompt across all 3 schools, kind of the same standard and expectation, which also helps grow their professional development when they sit down together with teachers from 3 different middle schools. That was the intent of it, not to be a high stakes, high pressure. I think it was definitely felt like that's what it was, and I think we have some stressed out students. There was a technical glitch where the servers went down with Writable, which is the program they use while they were doing the assessment, or they weren't working well, and so they stopped the assessments. And basically, all 3 principals have gone back to their ELA teachers to say, okay, what's the best way to complete this that works for our schedule, for our children in the best way, because they don't all operate on the same schedules. So they are approaching it a little bit differently, but this is, again, it's not going to be used for high stakes. It's not going to be used for the placement. It is supposed to be mid-year. What do we need to do moving forward? That's my understanding, so.
Mr. Shea.
Thank you for bringing that up. Unless this board agrees otherwise, for a good purpose, the administration has always reviewed with the board assessments like that, and I'm not sure anybody would either support or object to Writable. It sounds like, as always, it always has the right intent. It sounds like the snag was in the execution. I think going forward, at least from my perspective, if it's not something that's in a board-approved assessment schedule, we'd probably be best if we weren't doing that. Now, of course, the board assessment schedule could always be modified if the administration thinks that comes forward. And I know probably, you know, Tony, you've only been here since July, so every day I'm sure has a fun surprise. Maybe this was another fun surprise. So, but I think, at least as a parent, we've all been parents, parents are such great, they're the front line in getting kids de-stressed. So if they don't know about things, then they can't participate as helpfully as they might. So I think that's the main reason, is not to overly control the assessment, but it also lets parents really participate in the rhythm of their kids and getting them in the right mindset anytime they have to take an assessment, whatever that may be. And the best way to do that is to communicate, and the best way to do that is to have that coming with enough runway that everybody knows what it is and they can see. So just some feedback on that topic.
I know I sent you a whole bunch of questions and comments and concerns already about this, but I also wanted to thank, well, we at least have one of our middle school principals here that I can see. I know that this was a tough call at the last second to try to handle the technical glitches. You guys did an amazing job of thinking on your feet. And I will echo Mr. Scher's concerns that this was not put on the assessment schedule, and it definitely was shared with parents as a high-stakes test. I know the students were very concerned when it got pushed off and it was moved and things were changed at the last minute. They had taken time out of their scheduled curriculum to be trained to use a new app, which I don't know if this is new or what the funding was for that, but the students, we don't know what sort of curriculum that they've missed to be trained for this, and I know that it caused quite a bit of stress for probably the administrators, our teachers, and the students for the last-minute adjustments. But much like Mr. Scher says, if there are changes and things that are being added to the assessments, it is really important that we have the discussion, at least to know it's happening, because we do get to field a lot of parent questions, comments, and concerns. And I think, basically, if it is something that is not going to be a high-stakes test that is going to be used for placement at the middle school level, which was how it was positioned to parents, I think it might be very helpful that parents get a secondary note saying that it's been adjusted backwards. It's probably a great thing for the students' portfolio. It's going to teach them some wonderful writing skills, and I can always support something like that. But there were a lot of very stressed out pre-holiday students, at least one in my house for sure. So thank you.
Ms. Downey.
I do not have a middle schooler, as some others do, so this was news to me today. I have a question about what assessment, I don't think we as a board are supposed to hear about every level of assessment, is that correct? So would this, not knowing, was this test of the level that we would have known about or should have known about?
I think that it's a little bit of a tough question in that the way it was, I think, in the curriculum as an end of unit, everyone does the same assessment. The way it was communicated, absolutely, because it went out to all middle school parents. It was all at the same time. So yes, and we've had that discussion as a staff.
Okay, no, just because if it's not a level that we need to get involved in, that doesn't change the communication piece of it. So I'm glad to hear that it's going to be worked on going forward.
So I've got a young constituent who had some concerns and voiced them to me for several days this week. But what I would say is it was not an end of unit test for every student. The advanced classes actually were doing a different unit, did not do this unit, and basically had to have a crash course on this so that they wouldn't be surprised walking into this test. So I guess we need to be very, very careful when we say that this is the same for everybody, because it truly was not. So just something to be cognizant of. I do believe this is something that rose to the level of it should have been on the assessment schedule that we did take up earlier this year. The idea of that schedule is to say, if we're adding something, are we balancing that out by taking something else away? We're not trying to over-assess our students. The assessments have to have meaning. We don't want to just be testing for the sake of testing. So if this is something the teachers are looking for and it's useful, that's great. But maybe there's something we can take off the plate and replace it with this. Anything else for the superintendent? Ms. Kowalski.
So while I don't disagree so much with my other fellow board members, I will attempt to bring a voice of reason to the conversation, in that I do have a middle school, and we did go through the little bit of panic But on the flip side, I do think that there are times in life that kids will have to go through panic and they will have to study and prepare for tests and they will have to figure it out. So in one way, shape, or form, I use this as a teaching moment for my own daughter as a character builder on what she needed to do and how to assess it. And I think while there are pros and cons, I think if we want to look at a pro of what happened this week, that was certainly a pro, and it was a teachable moment both to parents and to students. I used it in my own house, and so I think there will be other situations in life where they will have to learn how to deal with this, and they can learn from what happened this week.
I 100% agree with that, Karen, and certainly that was the instruction I gave to my son, but since we have to help the other 1,999 students and act as the, I was just frustrated with the process because we approved an assessment schedule not too long ago. We've been hearing from a lot of parents that we're over-testing, and then when we sort of logically went through an assessment schedule to then sort of be blindsided with one, and the original communication on it did say it was for placement in the high school. So it was a high-stakes exam, and if we want to change it, that's fine, but then let's make sure that we're all on the same page, because clearly we were not.
All right, with that, we'll move on to reports of officers, committees, and liaisons. Ms. Stowe?
All right, 3 committees, let's see. The policy committee, we sort of took a break this month, and we are going to get back to it in 2020. And we're taking a break because the budget committee was where I really needed to focus our time over the past month, and I think we did that. We had quite a few meetings, and I think you'll see the results of that in tonight's budget, especially on the capital side, and I'm pretty proud of what we accomplished with Tony on that. Last but not least, I'm doing the feasibility study for all the fields across the town, and we just started to kick that off with Weston and Sampson, and we'll have an update more for you early next year on the process. Thank you.
So I know Christina went to the New Lab meeting this week. Is there an update and maybe a certificate of
I went to the New Lab Building Committee meeting, which is closing in on the last of those punch list items. We're probably only going to have 2 more meetings and hopefully be turning the building over to the district. So it's really, there's going to be a walkthrough next week on the break week, a bunch from the principal and the builders, and just to run through all the little minor items. So they're moving along well.
And just to add to that, the goal is to achieve the final certificate of occupancy. The hope is by the end of this month, although the holidays may get in the way of that, but we're crossing our fingers. And we've tentatively put the turnover of the building on our agenda for January. So we'll see. It would be a record, and kind of proud of the work the committee did there. Mr. Scher, do you want to talk about strategic planning and kicking that off?
I was going to defer until Tony spoke on the item, which I think is on our calendar, right? So, but thank you. And then I didn't want to preempt the superintendent.
Mr. Kelly?
I was just letting Ms. Stowe go first. So I was politely saying you go first. Stadium meeting went very well. We had the committee met last night, and we decided on a plan to put forward for public comments on the 7th of January. We, I believe everyone who was left in the meeting, it did go a little long, everyone left in the meeting did vote positively for this proposal.
And thank you for reminding everybody, 7 p.m., January 7th, Central Middle School. So please put that on your calendars. Any other reports? Ms. Downey?
I went to the high school feasibility study committee meeting yesterday for the entrance at the high school, and we had 4 different architecture firms come and make presentations, and the group picked one by pretty much unanimous, right, Tony, that we liked to go ahead with the feasibility study.
Great. All right. Now the reports, we'll move on to our discussion items. So our first discussion item is the strategic plan update. Dr. Jones.
Yes, and this just is an oral update tonight, kind of mid-year. Mr. Scher and I did have our first conversation now that he is leading on that committee, and I've told him over the holidays I'm kind of remapping and looking at kind of how we want to go forward based on our conversation. We do have, at the end of January or during January, we will be making sure the teachers, staff understand what the PLP will look like when that goes live online. You know, I told the board we would get that done so that by the end of January, 1st of February, parents will be able to see those results through ECHO. So that, again, we're working on getting that live, but we wanted to get through the parent conferences first so that parents weren't seeing stuff, asking teachers questions, and they don't even really know what it is. So the month of January is kind of a training month before we open that up. All of our tiles are all online now, which was something, again, that we were working on. We'll be updating the NGSS information in the next few weeks and get that on there. We also have the curriculum that's online right now for parents, which was again a big request over the last couple of years. The K-5 math and science. Our target for the ELA is the end of February, mid-March, in that time range. It's a lot more curriculum to put on, so it takes a little bit longer, but we're on track with everything we've committed to do this year.
All right, Mr. Chair.
I think as Tony said, she and I had a long conversation, and she had suffered through me, a long talker on the subject, but it was a good discussion about strategy. She asked some very insightful questions that I think as a board we're going to need to consider. Just in terms of strategy, so we're all on the same sheet of music, when we think about strategy, if we look back at the strategy that we have right now, it really is three parts to it. The first one is kind of articulated as a vision of where we want to be. What does the school system look like at some time in the future, whatever we decide that to be? Current plan, it was 5 years. There's a debate on whether 5 years is a good number. That's a discussion we should have as a board. Should it be 5? Should it be something more shorter term? And that's really based upon a variety of factors that we can talk about, not the least of which is in what time frame can you actually execute. But the second part is really the goals. So if you say, if I want to be something like this in the future, what might that look like in terms of goals that we need to render so that we can, hang some meat on that bone and know what that is? And then the last part's really what strategy is really about. Strategy is really about the how. So if you have a vision and you want to get someplace, how are you actually going to do that? And that's all about making critical choices. The suggestion that I'm making is that the board, working with the administration, obviously, maybe starting in February or March, starts down a process of trying to answer those three questions. At which point, it may make sense, given our governance structure, for that maybe to be kind of where the board draws a line. And then that is provided as essentially guidance for the administrators to really take that and flesh that out at a level down, which is what would be a plan, how would that be executed, how would it be measured, so that we don't drift into the world of micromanagement. But that's not to say this isn't done collaboratively. If you have an idea of a hard line, that's probably the wrong vision. There's probably some part of these 5 things where the board is maybe providing the leadership and the administration is supporting maybe a little more. And then there's another part where the administration is clearly leading and we're providing support. I think people have thought about this in the past as kind of a your task, my task. A good strategy process, in my experience, doesn't really work that way. It's much more of a somebody's leading, somebody's supporting, and it's a very symbiotic thing. The 2 questions that I think we need to think about as a board, and I'm open to ideas about how to get underneath this. One question that we really need to ask is, how much latitude do we want to give? How blue sky do we want to be in our thinking? One idea, I'll give you an example, would be we kind of take the existing plan as a construct, and then we think about the aperture only being wide enough as to kind of refine. There may be another one where we say, well, we want to really open up the aperture because we may learn something based particularly, I think, is an important seminal moment where Tony Jones has a lot of observations as a new superintendent. And I think it's important that we take all those in at the beginning of the process, and we have a real collaborative conversation with Tony about, hey, what are you seeing? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What's going really well? What maybe doesn't have as much execution behind it as we have thought had execution behind it as a board. It's a time to have really kind of an open and sobering conversation, and it leads to thinking about, I call it kind of the big hairy idea. How far do we want to go in a concept? In this plan, as an example, one we have right now, there was a big hairy idea. It was to truly transform Greenwich by going to truly personalized learning. That was a big jump. It was really ambitious. Sometimes there's strategies that are well suited for those kind of big jumps. Sometimes it helps to just focus on, hey, wait a minute, maybe I just want to work on the next 3 years on things that are foundational to set myself up to come back and do that. So that's an important conversation that the board needs to have at the beginning, because that will set how this process runs and how we focus in this process. The second part that we need some input from the board is typically when you would go out in a strategic planning process, you really have to get all your stakeholders and see what's on their mind, because that's a critical input at the beginning. In this case, of course, if you think of the customer as being the student and the student is represented by a parent, that's critical, right? All the other stakeholders that we have in the community. So the question that I think we need to ask ourselves is, how do we want to go about that process? And what kind of engagement do we want to have? And how deep and broad do we want that to be? As an example, we could do some forums and it could build on or validate work we've already done. Or we could go retain a survey firm, as an example, to do a broad and deep as was done with the last strategic plan. So I think it's important, as we lay this out and we lay out a calendar, we need to think about answering those first two questions. And then based upon those answers to those first two questions, which is how wide an aperture, what is the depth of engagement that we want to have with the community, how deep do people think we need to go. Based upon that, we can build a process that's very clear. We can march down each steps, come out with a really strong, updated strategic plan. And we can do that by the time we roll around to June, if we roll up our sleeves and commit ourselves to it. So it's not something that hangs and lingers, but it's very doable. But there's no doubt we'll need to kind of make those decisions soon. And then my thought would be to get the strategic planning committee together in January, based upon those, come up with a straw man, present it back to the board for consideration, adjustment, and then get to work. Questions?
So, just thinking about the calendar, because you raise a point, right? The end of the year comes sooner than you think, and the end of the year is always full of a lot of extra stuff, right? We've lived this experience. So just looking ahead at our meetings, we basically have a board PD session in the end of January, so that we give your committee time to meet before then. There's some stuff on there already, and we can talk about that during agenda planning. There's actually a board PD session, or a board retreat actually in March 5th, and strategic plan is already on there. We've got an open PD session on the 2nd. So I guess as you get your committee together, if you want to start to use the calendar as a way to guide the discussion of the board, I would love for it to be at the PD sessions, because that gives us the time we need, as opposed to, clogging up an agenda and not being able to get to that because we're trying to get through everything else. So I guess I'll wait to hear from you as to the calendar. I think we should add it at the end of January as a placeholder. I think it makes a lot of sense, because that gives you at least your first target in time with the board. And I'm happy to hear otherwise.
Sounds great. Does anybody have any, I mean, you can give me the feedback. I'm going to try to call everybody individually to get your input. I just didn't get to it yet. But after Tony and I spoke. But does anybody have any preliminary thoughts on how broad you want to open the aperture? And then the other question is, does anybody have any views on depth and breadth of community engagement? The good news is, pretty good for the new board members, which is a hard question to ask. We have a lot of survey data already. Okay, so it's not like we're sitting around going, we have no idea what people really think. And of course, we all know it because we're out in the community, right? And we have our own views. But the more important is, there's been a lot of data collected that's been collected with scientific methods. So it's not like we're working with nothing, but different people have different views on depth. I know, Peter, you've been through it before. Actually, I think you and I are the only ones who've been through it before inside. But anybody who has any views on that, it's helpful to just get that as some guidance. You can give it to us separately, or if anybody's got any thoughts now, we're all ears.
Ms. Hirsch.
I was going to say I have quite a few, but I'd love to hear. I can happy to just discuss it at our first committee meeting and just hear what your discussion with Tony was before we move forward, because it's good to have her input before we step forward, and she's got an outside view. So I'll just reserve my thoughts till we meet.
And I guess since I have been here with you the longest, we really have been at this a long time. I know it might shock some in the community because I basically been a cheerleader for the strategic plan, but I originally voted against it on the basis that it had no actionable items, it had no SMART goals. And I think that that's been one of the largest challenges we've had in the last 4.5 years is execution. And I think it goes back to that. So as you're developing, right, I think specific action plans is something that lives with the administration, but it's got to be called for, otherwise it just doesn't happen. One thing that keeps coming to mind is we have those goals. We have goals in our plan. Maybe they're the right high-level goals, maybe they aren't. I think that's a good place for discussion because it will guide then underneath those how deep do we want to get. We've talked about before the strategic plan, the board would set, so many kids in algebra by a certain grade, and we sort of have lost that. And I don't know if I think that drove execution down into the buildings more than the big picture goals. And I think it's great to have big picture goals, but maybe to get back specific. And we've got a lot of assessment data, using a multitude of sources that I think can guide us to areas that maybe are right to focus. So I think there's a lot of ground to cover. I commend you for thinking about it at the high level, and I look forward to hearing from the committee. And let's get it on the calendar. I don't want the year to run out on us and not be ready to have a plan in place. We have the same fear. So.
I guess I'd like the holiday to think about it, but I'm almost thinking a little bit of a hybrid of what you said, which is I feel like we just kind of started to actually get a dashboard, right? And we finally got there. It was a little bit behind, and so now that we have that, there's a part of me that just wants to extend that, but that seems like the easy way out. But I 100% want Tony's perspective because she's bringing real world experience from other districts, and so and I know you've done this before. So I guess if we could sort of, my gut reaction is find the hybrid, but I guess let me take the holiday to think about it.
Let me just give you something to think about, right? Hopefully, we can all wish for Christmas or whatever holiday you're celebrating, right? That Tony's in the job for 5, 8, 10 years, let's say, right? Let's just say it's a long time. Because if something happens between now and then, I'm going to kill myself. So.
Good contract with someone negotiating.
Yeah. But Tony didn't say this, so this is my way of thinking about it. You could think about Tony as, hey, well, what's the first 3 years of Tony going to look like? What's the next 3 years of Tony going to look like? What's the next 3 years of Tony going to look like, right? And you could say, wow, I really want a bold, super future-oriented thing, and I want to do it right away, right? And that may be one path we go down. We could decide that, right? We like where we are. We want to put that on steroids. Tony put that on steroids for us because that's really moving us down. You could also say, you know what? Maybe it ain't as sexy, but I'm going to spend this next 3 years really working on my foundation. And then 3 years after that is the place where we get that really bold goal. So the point I'm just trying to make, I'm using that as an example of these are the ways that I think as a board we're going to have to make some thoughts and choices. But to be fair to Tony, because I said at the front edge, right? If you want to ask Tony to think about that problem, right, we would probably have to provide some guidance early in that. And I'm very confident in talking to Tony, you know, whichever direction we all decide to go together, right? 8 of us plus the administration and so on and so forth. I haven't heard anybody yet, particularly from Tony's side, say, no, I'll do either. I'll go anywhere, but we really have to think about, you know, how do we want to lay that out? I'm already thinking about it in terms of phases over time. Maybe that's a helpful way for others to think about it too. So, but I'll try to come back to each one of you and then try to coalesce that and then bring that all back to the board of everybody's thoughts so that everybody can see them very early in January. Okay?
Before we end on this, I want to circle back. So the first thing you said is student profiles are going to be available. I forgot to say thank you. It's been a long time coming, and we're happy to see that they'll be out there for families and teachers to use. So thank you for that. All right. If there's nothing else on that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the summer school program report. Dr. Caraballo.
So good evening again. In your board packet, you have the 2018-19 summer school report. It gives you the purpose, goals, and the strategies that were implemented in the 2018-19 summer school program. The report is presented in 5 sections. The financials on page 4, enrollment on page 4 and 5, reading results on pages 6 through 11, attendance on page 12, and a summary page on page 13. It describes the summer school student in Greenwich and includes the federal law of IDEA regulation for extended school year services and the current BOE policy. Some of the highlights from the 2018-19 summer school program are: the enrollment this past summer was lower than last year, as there was only one viable elementary school available to house the summer school program, the elementary program. The pre-K through 3 students were housed at Glenville Elementary School, and grade 4-5 and the secondary 6 through 12 was housed at Central Middle School, as Greenwich High School had major facilities work scheduled this past summer. 25% of the K through 8 students who were recommended for summer school opted to enroll. The students were identified in 2 priority categories: priority 1 for the most urgent needs, and priority 2 for the next level of need. Most of the students were recommended and attended summer school. Most of the students who were recommended and attended summer school, K through 8, had stronger outcomes in the fall STAR compared to the control group, those students who were recommended but did not register or come to summer school. Students who were English language learners, as well as special education students, had a significantly higher percentage of students achieving high growth, and you can see that on page 9. We have not met the goal of students attending 75% of the time. However, it does continue to improve each year. This will be part of our discussion for the 2019, I always get mixed up with this one, 2019-2020 school programming, summer school program. So I'm open to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. There was a lot of data in here, newbie. I just had a couple questions. Number 1, next summer, let's just refer to them in summers. I think it's like this was summer, this is all the summer of 19 students.
Last summer.
The summer during 19. So let's
Correct.
just, I think that's an easier for us all to think of. So in the summer of 2020, will we still only have 1 building available, or will we have more locations because the number of students is much lower, and what do we anticipate for next summer?
We are hoping that there will be a minimum of 2 buildings that will be available. I'm hoping that we can use the new lab next summer, as well as Hamilton Avenue, as that's where many of our children do come from.
So we'll be able to accommodate more children?
That is our hope.
Because we turned children away last summer?
Yes, we did.
That was one. And just kind of in all the charts and graphs and things, comparisons. There was one category, kind of they're broken down to like unsatisfactory, low, expected, high, that we seem to have had challenges with students in the low category.
Correct.
Not really doing what their comrades did. Could you just explain that a little bit more detail, what it
would
means?
depend on who that child was. Some of the, there was one area of, we break it up in free and reduced lunch, special education, English language learners are all high needs students. So some of the high needs students did a very good job of being able to meet or exceed their expectations and growth. But there is a group of students, a small group of students that has not yet made that, and it is something that we work on every year.
But what's the difference between low and unsatisfactory, just to understand in these charts?
That's how the growth is reported out on STAR.
Going into the summer?
No. As they are tested in September for the beginning of the year. What we want to see is, are they performing at the same level that they did? Are they performing higher in September than they did in June? And that's what we're looking for. We want them to be able to be performing at a higher level.
No, obviously, but I'm just trying to understand your categories. Like on page 8, I'm just trying to understand what the different breakdowns are. Kind of who's being compared in those different buckets.
So you have students who made unsatisfactory progress in reading. And then you had 5% of the students who were enrolled in summer school versus those students who did not. So the students who didn't enroll, 5% of those students didn't make growth unsatisfactory. 5% of the students who did enroll made unsatisfactory progress. So then when you look at the low progress, this was a little interesting. We wondered about this one. 22% of the students who did not enroll made low growth, and only 15% of our students made low growth. And we had expected that to be, we want it to be lower because we want it to be higher in the expected and high growth. So in the expected growth, 63% of the students who were recommended but did not attend made expected growth, but 67% of the students who attended made expected growth. And then for the high growth, 10% of the students who did not attend but were recommended made 10% of them made high growth, and then 14% of the students who attended summer school that were recommended made high growth. And that's how the growth is reported out in STAR.
Peter, you want to go? So I'm glad to read about the literacy focus. This has been a discussion we've had running for a while now.
This is our second year with that.
And I would love to see more of it, so I want to continue to encourage you to do interventions. If students are there for math, let's focus on math. If students are there for literacy, let's focus on literacy. You know, the opportunity, you have the students for an extended school year, for whatever reason they're there, to focus on those areas. If we're going to talk about personalized learning, smaller groups, smaller numbers, more intervention, right? It's an opportunity. I guess the other thing I want to point out, so I had asked a couple of questions about the extended school year students, and yeah, I see the number of students who have ESY as part of their plan. I understand that that's gone down, which I guess is a good thing, but what shocked me is of the number of students who have ESY in their IEPs, only 60% of them come. So I hope we're going to take some time this year to actually look at that and see, is that something that should be in their IEP or not? Ask the parents why they come or didn't come, so we can understand what that's about, because putting that in there means we're scaling up a program on the assumption they're going to come, and maybe our program is not the right size. Just want to make sure we're there. Mr. Chair.
And I want to be clear on something you said. This time I tried not to get buried in the data and tried to listen to the narrative. You said 25% of those invited.
Of those recommended and invited.
Okay. Here's the part where I get murky on the language. I understood invited to mean, and if I'm wrong about this, correct me. You're invited because it's in your IEP. An extended school year is required. Okay, hold on. Yeah, hold on. And you're invited because in a school, in a particular criteria, there's a criteria in the elementary schools particularly, you're invited based upon that criteria. So there was 2 ways you access this program, right? And then at middle schools and high school, it's a different criteria, but again, you're recommended, right? And then on top of that, it's people who want to come to the program. So there's this idea of people we invited and then people who come because they want to. I heard you say only 25% of invited showed up. So what does that mean? Who showed up? Does that mean 25% of the ESY plus the people that the schools wanted?
No, 25% of the recommended students who are regular education students
Okay, that's what you meant.
qualified, yes, attend. ESY students attend based on what their parents make a decision during the summer, but they do have meetings, PPT meetings, and they discuss, does this child need to have an extended school year program?
Right.
So they're not quote unquote invited, they have
I'm just trying to clarify the terminology. So just remind me, which I can see the numbers here, but it's, of the ESY this year, it looks like we had fewer that had it in their program, had it in their PPT, right? Because the numbers went from, this year it said 167, and in 2018 it was 245. So, right?
Where are you looking, Peter?
I am looking on page 9. Oh, I'm sorry, page 5. I don't have my glasses. This is a problem of an older person.
Oh, page 5, sorry. Page 5, there were 167 students this year, not counting pre-K, and 245 students last year.
Is this actual people who showed up, or this is the number of people
These are the people that participated in the summer
showed up?
school program, correct.
Okay, okay. Do you know what percentage of 167 that is of the people who had it in their IEP?
Not offhand, I'd have to
Is it like 80% or 50%?
I'd have to do the math,
Okay,
Peter.
and then 245 is 25%. I'm sorry, not 245, I'm sorry, 167 is 25%, which meant we invited roughly 650 people, kids. Because you said 25% of those invited. Yeah, no?
Page 6. Look at page 6, and it shows you the number of students that participated. That is not the number of people that were invited.
Right, 666.
Those are the
and that's
people that
around
participated. So the people that were invited for reading in K6, K8 and attended, 167 of those. School invitation, no kids were invited by the schools because we just had the one site for elementary.
So we invited 893, and you've told me invited does not include ESY.
Correct.
Correct. ESY is on top of this.
Correct.
So okay, how did we wind up turning people away at this point?
Because we did not have enough space to have all of the students attend, and we had to take the students who participated in ESY and said that they wanted to come. We had to take them, make sure that we had space for them, as well as space for the students that were recommended, and making sure that we have a balanced class.
Yeah, that's a different subject. The thing that I'm stuck on that I don't get is why would we recommend and send to parents a recommendation to 893 kids when we haven't a prayer of being able to service them. We couldn't even service them at 25%.
Because we don't know how many students would be available to come, and at the time that we started inviting students, recommending students, we thought that we had 2 elementary sites to be able to use, but we found out that we did not.
I'm to where Mr. Bernstein is. I think we need to think about forecasting and limits a little bit more carefully, because this
was an anomaly this year.
Okay.
No,
I understand not having a building, but I'm also on the, it's like building a highway and there's only 25% of the cars. That can get really expensive if you're not careful. So just something to think about.
Ms. Towe?
I was where Peter was, but so then I guess after following that line of questioning, and why wouldn't we make our goal 75% for the year if we couldn't even accommodate 25%? We probably should.
Attendance is 75% of the time we want students to attend.
So you want a minimum of 75% of registered will attend at least 25 days of the registered recommended. So of the ones that actually register.
Where are you?
I'm on page 2. I got the impression you're moving your goal or the actual of 25 to 75. Is that not the case?
We want a minimum of 75% of the students who enroll to attend at least 25 days out of the 6-week session.
Okay, very good, then that's different. Then following up to that question, last year we switched to the 6-week session, right?
No, we've had a 6-week session for,
There was some schedule.
I don't know, forever.
No, there was some schedule change. There were two, okay, there was something, I remember being a significant change last year. What was it?
Right. This is the second year that we had just one 6-week session.
Okay. You used to do 2.
It used to be 2, and it was really used as some.
Wait, can you, sorry, I didn't hear you.
It was a STEM and humanities approach, so for 3 weeks it was the STEM approach, and then for 3 weeks it would be a humanities approach. That's what it previously was.
So we're sticking with this revised.
We are sticking with the revised, correct.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Hirsch.
Sorry, I had two separate topical questions. How early do we reach out to parents to provide this information for students that we invite, or for students who have this in their IEP?
We start in February.
And how much follow-up do we do with these parents to try to explain?
A lot of follow-up.
Okay. Secondarily, so when it comes to students who are invited because they need remedial help, and this year we said was an
Yep, I get it.
Yeah, thanks. I'm tired, I can't help it, I'm sorry.
Me too.
So I was just curious if we could, is there a possibility this should happen again, to offer a morning session and an afternoon session, since we're focused on targeting students for math help if they need math help, or English help if they need English help, so they're not there all day. I remember an esteemed board member who's sitting in the audience consistently talking about that, as students not wanting to come if it was only one subject they needed, but they were required to be there all day.
Something we can definitely discuss.
And then when it comes to, because I know you guys are talking about students that have extended summer learning in their IEPs, again, that may be a secondarily targeted approach. I don't know how many students actually have them in their IEPs, and how, is there a way to reach out if those parents choose not to send their students to our extended summer learning programs? Ask them why. It may be that they're not having specifically targeted programs for those particular students, or the educators aren't trained to teach what they specifically need. I don't really know, but if we're not meeting the needs of students that have these in their IEPs, I think we're missing the boat somewhere.
Mary has the answer to that.
This year we had 387 students who had extended school year on their IEPs. We do, to Peter's point, I think, we do ask parents if they're going to access the program. So we do try to make sure that we're getting, before the summer starts, at least an indication of how many parents are going to send. A lot of parents choose to go on vacation and don't want to access the program because of their family vacation. Once students get older, like middle school and high school, students in many cases push back and don't want to go to summer school, and parents choose to honor their students' requests. And this year we were a little bit more stringent, going back into the team meetings and making sure that we went through the checklist with all the families to make sure that they were eligible.
So just as a follow-up then, do we specifically follow up with those that choose not to exercise the option to come as to why? If there's, do we have something that have, for instance, that a parent would sign saying, I'm opting out of the summer program, even if it's in my IEP, just so that we know and explain? Yes, some of them may have private tutors, some of them may going to specialized learning programs over the summer. There's 101 countless ways somebody may be touring the country and learning through hands-on experiences. But if it's in their IEP, I think it's necessary for us to make sure we know why they're not choosing to take advantage of our program. Because there may be parents that truly are choosing to do other types of learning opportunities, and there may be parents that just feel we can't provide what their students need over the summer. Just to make sure we know what the answers are there.
We certainly do have some families who indicate to us that they want their children to be in camp. They want them to have a summer camp experience as opposed to going to summer school. There are some parents who opt for specialized programs that they choose that may or may not be 6 weeks long, so that may be a shorter program. So in many cases, parents do tell us why they're not opting out. Why they're not taking the program.
Ms. Kowalski?
So with respect to the 1 session for 6 weeks, have we found that there's better enrollment for those in the years prior where we've broken it down to 2 sessions, perhaps to accommodate some of the parents who travel, et cetera? Do we feel that that's beneficial? Have you seen a difference between the two?
We did not have any targeted interventions, and that's what the board had asked me to do after my first year that I was here, to revamp it and make sure that we were using that time to really advance students and their skills, and also give the opportunity, still give the opportunity to those secondary students who wanted to accelerate or enrich their programming too.
Mr. Sherrick.
Tony, in a special education report, 2 years ago, I think we started this, maybe 3 years ago we started this, we started asking for the copy of essentially what we submit to the state and the federal government, meaning there are, I forget how many categories there are, where you have to code someone for primary identified need in special education. And those categories come from the federal government, and they are required to report them. The last time we got that, it told us where the concentration was of where the primary, obviously student can be more than one, so there's a limitation to that reporting. I'm wondering if what we could do is get that exact same report for the 367 kids who were giving ESY. It would be very interesting to me to see what does that distribution look like of the primary disability, and who's got that for this year, this 2019 year, who had ESY in their plan. So it's a format we already have. It doesn't require a lot of reinvention. It just requires somebody to put the data into the format, and you can find it in the special education report we've been given previously. It's standard reporting.
We can get that.
Thank you.
Ms. Olson, did you have anything you wanted to add on this?
Megan, are you still there?
I am.
Anything to add? Anything to add?
No, she covered it.
Okay, I guess I want to circle back to something you said, Mary. So basically, if there's 387 students that still have ESY in their plan, that's, I guess, about 30% of the special education population. Are we building our summer school program with the assumption that we're going to get 387 students? Or it's built on, I guess I'm curious as to what it's built on if it's not the total pop.
Combination of the total students who are eligible, trends in the percentage of students who come, and then indications from families whether they will be coming or not.
So I guess with the numbers down this year, were we on target? Were we high? Were we low in terms of how we built out the summer program?
I think we were pretty much on target with what we thought were going to come. I think we had the right number of teachers hired. Again, it's not unusual for us to get some swing the last 2 or 3 weeks before summer school starts. Families thought they had something planned and then it fell through, so now they're going to access summer school. Or they told us the student was coming, something comes up with the family and they decide not to send. But we've been pretty close to our projections for most summers. I would know that based on our staffing. So the staffing has been adequate. We haven't had to go out and hire more staff.
Pre-K has been the only one that has been growing over each summer. That has really grown a lot.
Mostly because the pre-K program has grown.
Correct.
Most of the pre-K kids are eligible for ESY.
And they basically just extend from the regular school year through,
Yes.
yeah, so it becomes a 12-month program. All right. Any other discussion on the summer school report?
There was a large increase in students taking GHS advancement. Has that, what's the trend? What do you foresee happening?
I foresee it continuing and growing.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Time. All right, next up is the Central Middle School field options, and it's got Mr. O'Keefe listed. Welcome, Mr. O'Keefe.
Thank you, everybody. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you all for the warm welcome. I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Kevin Fusilier, who is the lead landscape architect on the Central Middle School field project. Kevin.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Fusilier. I'm a landscape architect and associate with Mylone & McBroom out of Cheshire, Connecticut. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to just kind of quickly go over where we've started with this project, the services we've performed to date, and where we are with the current state of design. So we've done data collection and site investigation out on the site at Central Middle School. We performed preliminary environmental investigation, soil sampling. We did a topographic survey of the site. We performed a traffic feasibility analysis, and then we prepared 3 options in a preliminary design stage. So the existing fields are to the north of the school. They consist of a full baseball diamond, a youth baseball diamond in the southeast corner, and then the common lawn area between is shared for a multi-purpose field, primarily soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, flag football, in addition to supporting school recess and physical education. So for data collection and site investigation, we performed a site reconnaissance, go out, take photos, inspect the entire site, look for any red flags that could hinder reconstruction, redevelopment of the site. Wetland scientists from Mylone & McBroom went out, canvassed the site looking for inland wetlands, water courses, regulated areas that would trigger regulated activities. The summary was no regulated resources were identified, which is good news. Then geotechnical engineers from our office went out, conducted a series of test pits, dug shallow holes throughout the site to investigate the nature of subsoils, depth of topsoil, condition of the subsoils below, which help drive us in how we design the site and improve the site overall. Overall, their conclusion was the site is favorable for the construction of proposed athletic fields. Then environmental scientists from our office went out and did an environmental investigation. First, they start by contacting town land use staffs, town departments, doing background research on the history of the site, going as far back as looking at aerials from the 1930s and then subsequently on to determine if there's any history of contamination at the site. And then also with those test pits that we did, we took soil samples. They found no PCBs, no PHA compounds in the soils, which is great news. And their summary was the soil at Central Middle School does not contain contaminants and would be considered clean fill if excavated and removed from the site. We performed a topographic survey of the athletic field area and the surroundings, which was the basis of design. And then our traffic engineers did a traffic feasibility analysis. Their investigation consisted of examining the existing roadways connecting the school, intersection site distances, crash history around the school, existing traffic volumes that you're currently experiencing, current field activity schedule. So we received data from the school about who's using the field, when they're using it, how many hours a week. Then they determined how many trip generations, how many times parents are dropping students off, picking them up, how many cars are going out. They looked at future traffic data, and then also existing roadway capacity analysis. Their conclusion was the adjacent roadway system will be able to accommodate traffic associated with any of the options we present. No mitigation is required on adjacent roadway systems. So again, good news. In your packet, you'll see that we prepared 3 options. We working with the project team. Option 1, natural grass. Reconstructing the fields almost exactly how they are configured out there, with one change to change the configuration of the full-size ball field to give it a preferred orientation, but then also make it more accessible from the school and parking areas. Well, it's a reconstruction of natural grass. It's an engineered reconstruction in natural grass. So right now the fields do not drain well. When they don't drain well, it rains, the fields really aren't usable. You don't want to use them. It's not good for the players. It's not good for the health of the field. So by engineering the system, I mean, we're going to put subsurface drainage that you're not going to see. That's going to allow these fields to drain more rapidly than they currently do. But you still must remember that natural grass can only be used so much. So there's still limitations, but we can improve these fields, make them better drainage, make them more usable after rain events. Option 2, go fully synthetic turf with the entire facility. Same configuration, but now all synthetic turf, no natural grass. This really just increases playability in all weather. Synthetic turf can be used in rain or soon after heavy rains. They can be played in the winter. They can be played on year round. So synthetic turf will just give you flexibility that you do not have to keep athletes off the field in inclement weather. And they can just be used pretty much nonstop. Where natural grass, you want to limit use to 20, 25 hours a week. Synthetic turf, you can use nonstop. You don't have to let it to rest and regrow as you should with natural grass. And then option 3 is what we're calling the hybrid. It would maintain a natural grass area in one of the ball fields, the smaller of the two, and then would propose a multi-purpose synthetic turf field. This would give you the benefit of the turf field, the all-weather use. It would maintain natural grass for play, recess in some sports, and there is a cost savings by not going full synthetic on the entire area. Option 3 also frees up a lot of space for a spectator opportunity, should that field be heavily used and used for competition. We prepared an opinion of probable cost based on these initial options. To summarize, option 1 comes in just north of $1 million, not including design fees to further the project along from this point. For that purpose, we're advising to carry about 8% for final design, engineering, and then construction administration. And that is an engineer such as engineering firm such as ours, going out, working with the contractor, keeping an eye on them, making sure that they're doing work according to plan throughout construction. Option 2, without design fee, is just south of $3 million. So this is the full synthetic turf field. Quite an additional cost to go completely synthetic turf, plus our design fees. And then option 3, the hybrid, comes in at the middle at about $1.6 million. So you can see the range. Obviously natural grass reconstruction, although engineered natural grass, around $1 million up to $3 million for a fully synthetic turf site. And that's where we are today. So the designs have only been brought through preliminary design. No concept has really been identified as a preferred concept. Those three concepts aren't the only options out there, but it's a starting point. We can always combine, make changes, make tweaks, but that gives you an idea of the opportunities out there and the range of costs for those opportunities to be implemented. So if you have any questions. One thing I will say for the synthetic turf option and the pricing, we based the synthetic turf system on the one used at Cardinal Stadium, which is a coated sand product. It is one of the more expensive systems out there, but a widely used and widely respected system. But a much more costly system than a traditional sand and crumb rubber field, which is used in the majority of fields, but as the industry evolves, we're seeing the systems evolve as well.
Ms. Hirsch?
It's a pretty well-known fact that we have do not have a sufficient number of fields in our town anyway for our students and town residents. So do you have an idea of how long it would take for remediation and rebuild for option 1, 2, or 3? Like how long the fields would be out of use for our students?
Typically, any project in the Northeast, the fields go offline right in the spring. As soon as we can get them off, the athletes and the students off, we want them off sooner the better. But a lot of these projects happen over the summer. Given the size of this field, about 170,000 square feet, it's rather large. It's really 2 fields the size, so 4-month project. So if you could get them off in June or sooner, ideally synthetic would be ready in August. Natural grass, depending on whether you seed or sod it, is going to need some time to grow in. Sod can grow in pretty quickly. Seed, you really want to give it at least a season of growth before you put athletes on there. So it could be offline for a while, depending on what option you go with, but it could be a 3 to 4 month project if you did go the synthetic route, or even the hybrid where you have the synthetic ready for use and play while the other field is restoring.
And I saw, obviously on the plan, you have 3 different layouts based on the option of what you're going to be using, natural grass or turf or hybrid. How much play space do the students lose based on each configuration? It looks like number 3, which is a mix, there may be some lost space,
3,
but I wasn't entirely
sure. So 3 is the only one where there is some lost space, where there's still going to be available space outside what's shown. It's just going to be more just free play, not organized. No rectangle field is going to fit in there. So there is a loss of space under the hybrid option.
Mr. Scher?
I've got a whole bunch of questions, so I'll just jump around. First, materials. If there were to be a synthetic field, can you talk about the current state of technology for field and fill? I have serious environmental concerns about synthetic fields. One of the decisions that I was here when we made the decision for Cardinal Field, there were 3 choices. One was an organic, a synthetic turf, obviously, and a organic fill, a acrylic coated sand fill, which is the one that we selected, and then the other one was, of course, crumb rubber, and I wouldn't do crumb rubber. But what's the current state of the art if you're looking for a synthetic turf that is the most, it's a kind of an oxymoron, synthetic and environmentally friendly? What's the, because at that time I think it was coconut shells.
Yep.
You know, I don't know to what degree this stuff has evolved in the last 5 years.
So currently we've designed fields with probably about 6 different combinations of infill. The majority being crumb rubber, just because it's been around the longest, cheap, proven, resilient, easy to maintain, and we're still designing fields with crumb rubber. However, we have plenty of clients that say, crumb rubber's off the table, what are our options? There's virgin rubber EPDM, still rubber product, never was a car tire. Some of our clients have better comfort level with that. It doesn't have the stigma of the crumb rubber that you get the bad press from. So Yale University is using EPDM rubber in all their fields. And it performs just like the SPR, so it's a well-known system. Still not good enough for a lot of people. Thermoplastic TPE, plastic pellets, raw virgin material that's never been anything else other than plastic pellet. has some resiliency like rubber, not rubber, green color, less perceived public, negative public perception. And we just did a couple fields over in Westport with TPE. Coated sand, commonly known as EnviroFill, as you know, has gained some popularity, very expensive, makes a firm surface, but it's sand with a coating on it, so it's not organic, or what I like to say natural, because I don't feel any of these should be classified as organic. But again, sand seems like it doesn't have the issues that crumb rubber have. Then you mentioned the cork and coconut husk, geofill. There's a few other names for it, but it's a blend of coconut husk, cork, rice hulls. Again, organic, natural product, comes with a high maintenance cost. You have to keep it. You have to keep it certain moisture content. So sometimes you have to irrigate it, which seems to be counterintuitive to what people expect with synthetic turf. It also breaks down rapidly, so it has to be replenished. So it's an added cost. But there are a few communities around Connecticut that have used this product. It's a nice product, but because it has the moisture, freezes quicker. So late fall, early spring, it can be an issue for playability.
What is that? Say more about that.
What's that?
Say more about that. I guess I was going to ask, there's the environmental aspect to it, but then, which is always top of mind for me. But then the other aspect of it is I'm much more interested in students' safety. We have someone on the board who will remain nameless, who actually plays on Greenwich High School. And, we're not high school students, so our bodies aren't quite as rubbery, but said, geez, that field is hard.
Yeah.
Hard.
Because it's 100% sand infill, so it's...
Well, I'm also interested, with our focus on concussion and, all the rest of it, I'm old enough to go to PT, and I'm amazed every time I go into PT, the number of kids who are in there where their knees are blown and they're 16 years old.
Yeah.
So I can see all these trade-offs. I'm really interested in your thoughts on that, the environmental aspect versus the safety for students.
Sure. So with all these alternate infills...
One sec, before you get there, I don't know, was cork at the end of the list? Because it seemed like you may have...
I said cork and coconut.
So the last sheet, there are new products coming out all the time because the industry is reacting to the issues with the chrome rubber and the perception. So there are fields now with walnut shells going into them, ground walnut shells. I only know of one in New England right now, but there is some desire for it. Again, a natural product, because it's the shell and not the nut meat. First thing that comes to my mind is nut allergies, but the owner, the president of the company's children have nut allergies. He stands by his product that's 99.9% free. I don't really see that one taking off. That's been around for a while. There's a new company out there marketing it. The latest one that we're excited to see, and there's a few installations, is a wood derivative. It's like it's an engineered mulch, little wood chip. Almost looks like sawdust, to be honest, but it's southern yellow pine, manufactured in the United States down in Georgia. Unlimited supply, cheap, natural, doesn't absorb water like the coconut product, doesn't have to be moistened. We see a big potential for this one. And the company that's been pushing it is a leader in the industry in research and safety and playability. So I think that one's we're going to be seeing a lot more of that moving down the road. And to your point on safety, now when we get away from a rubberized product or a product with resiliency, you don't get the cushion to protect the players, protect them from the concussion and the head injury that you would if you had a rubber infill. So then you have to introduce what your field has is a shock pad. It's a foam, it can be a foam or a rubber underlayment that goes under the field that really keeps that field to a level well within industry standards for concussion prevention. You can't make a field concussion free. You have to think of a field as a piece of equipment. So the field is, statistically, the fields cause 1 in 5 concussions are caused by the field. But when you think about players hitting their heads together and then falling and hitting their head on the ground, secondary, so it's really 1 in 4 concussions are caused by the field. So by the introduction of a shock pad, regardless of the infill, you're adding that extra layer of safety into that system. So we advise all our clients to consider a shock pad, but when you tell them, a shock pad's gonna add $1 to $1.50 a square foot, that conversation sometimes stops. But when we're talking infills that aren't rubberized, like the EPDM or the SBR rubber, the recycled tire, the shock pad is a must. Because those infills are just going to be too firm, like the EnviroFill, like the...
Can I ask a follow-up question to what you're talking about, and then I'll stop, so you talked about the infill, and I understand what you're saying. It sounds like it's on a continuum from rubber down. Just by way of curiosity, newest NFL fields, what are they using?
Rubber.
Rubber, okay. Then talk about the turf itself, and it's the issues relating to environment of the turf itself. There's lots of questions about heat and vapors, and I just don't know what's truth, what's not. Do you have any?
There's a lot of studies about heat, and there's no denying a synthetic turf field gets hotter. You have to look at the data closely, though. Infill aside, whether it's a black rubber product or another product, the plastic fibers themselves are reflecting a lot of heat back into the players. So if the sun's out and it's a warm day, just having the green fiber mat is going to create a heat increase. Now the infill can contribute to that, but you're never going to get away from having all that plastic fiber there raising the heat. Some studies show, though, the minute you get some cloud cover, the heat drops considerably. So a lot of it is reflective and not really being radiated out of the system. So there is a heat issue. There's a heat issue with natural grass too. If it's a 95-degree day, you should limit use on any field and keep the players out in the early morning and the afternoon, or limit their play to 30, 45 minutes, rest them. So there's a lot more than just the surface you're playing on, but no doubt synthetic turf can get hotter. Odor, infills can have an odor. Just as we know, new car smell. Everything can have an odor. The tires, they're rubber. Rubber has an odor. Plastic can have an odor. The organic will smell like earth, which is an odor, well, it's maybe more pleasant. So odor is a thing. There's no research that shows this odor is dangerous in an outdoor environment. There's a lot of research out there, though. So it's definitely a discussion that can be had, but I don't think, like the EnviroFill field, the coated sand, I don't ever notice really an odor out there. Usually you're within a running track, so all of a sudden maybe there's an odor. So, and then the turf itself hasn't changed much over the years. We are starting to see products that are ditching. The system is made up of the polyethylene plastic fibers tufted into a backing, which is usually some kind of geotextile woven fabric, and then it's secured into place with a urethane adhesive. We're starting to see systems get away from the urethane backing, or at least them offer a premium product that's more a woven product, because the urethane's the tricky piece to recycle. And we always offer our clients to put into our project specifications, do you want your turf recycled or just disposed of properly? And if you look in the news, it's been lately, there's a lot of turf being disposed of now. And so landfills are filling up with rolls of carpet. You can reuse it to some extent, depending on the level of wear. But we've put it into specs before we say, okay, well, you have to recycle it. Well, recycling is the company selling it to another company that's going to ship it to typically Malaysia, and then they turn it into composite decking and coasters and various products. And you get a certificate of chain of custody that says it's been recycled, and that's the end of it. That's sort of where it's been the best you could do up until now. A company out of the Netherlands is starting to build factories in the US. They claim they can recycle 99% of the turf system. Those factories are being constructed, but they're a couple of years from being online. So they're buying turf up. Again, it's just getting stockpiled here in the US while waiting to be recycled. So the industry is always evolving. It's getting better. It's something I try to stay on top of on a daily basis with alerts and keeping up with the news. So it's getting a lot better all the time.
Ms. Stowe?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to celebrate us having clean soil, because that's not something that happens all the time in Greenwich. And Joe, I want that in the paper, clean soil at Central. So, okay. Next thing, I mean, Dan, you and I have been spending a lot of time with the Park and Rec people, and we don't pay for maintaining our fields. But as a taxpayer, I care about that overall piece. And I'd like to sort of see at one point maybe like a net present value of the cost of these fields, because of course synthetic is a higher cost up front. But over the long term, I have to imagine it saves money. Right?
And while I don't have a breakdown tonight, I recently gave a similar presentation in another Connecticut town, and the one reality is, well, maintenance is lower on synthetic turf. You know, you're not mowing it, you're not seeding it, you're not aerating it, and there's a few other things. With a turf field, you're grooming it every now and then with similar to mowing, but you're not doing it 3 times a week, but you're just dragging a brush across it, inspecting it weekly. The factor is, though, even though, well, that's cheaper, think about 10 years or 12 years from now when you have to replace that field. Disposal costs, depending on which route you go, if you just say throw it out for, say, a standard field's $100,000, recycle it's $150,000, you have to pay for the replacement cost of that field. So you have to pay for a whole new carpet. That really offsets the savings from maintenance. So that's the simple answer, but we can definitely break it down.
I imagine people, can I ask one more question?
To go on the replacement value, so we have 15 school buildings. This is actually the only school building that's likely to get replaced. It is now, I think, 11 years out. So the timing of a 12-year replacement is sort of interesting to me, because I looked at the configurations and I was trying to think if that would limit us as to the use of the property. But if you're saying, regardless of what you put in, if you put in any kind of artificial, you're talking about a 12-year replacement cycle, that actually coincides with when we probably would be doing something on our building.
The replacement is, it's assuming we're going alternate infill, which we budgeted for. That pad that's under the field usually has a warranty of 25 years. So you really are only taking the infill and the carpet off and putting a new one on, and very limited repair to that base. So you're probably not going to reconfigure the site in 12 years. You're just going to replace the carpet and put a new one back on to be most cost effective.
Kathleen, if you wanted to ask your follow-up.
In option 3, we are talking about potentially losing a ball field, right?
Correct.
And admittedly, I'm a softball coach, so that hurts a little bit. But I'm sitting next to a rugby
We're keeping
coach,
the softball field.
so I'm gonna look at it from sort of a both fields purpose. This is where I'd love to hear from Dan or the central team to understand what our schools need, because I'm not going to opine on 2 baseball fields, 1 baseball field, and that's their call. So.
Funny enough, that was the same question I had. In your look at the use of the field, how often is it truly used as a baseball field? And is it our students versus is it a community use?
Yeah, so my recollection for this goes back a few meetings ago in a little while, but that was the underutilized piece of the site, the full-size ball field. I don't recall the exact use of it, the number comparable, but it was preferable to keep the smaller size field, and we show it as a softball field because it's a youth ball field size or softball, but it's not a regulation baseball field.
With a 37-foot wall in the outfield. And that's what it looks like. You got a short left field. Okay. Yeah, actually, Mr. Healy, if you want to come on up and talk about can you come to the mic? I'm sorry. Hear about the central use.
Hi, so Tom Healy, principal of Central, and I did bring 2 of my PE teachers, Nancy Tarantino and Nancy James, here as well, as they live this every single day with all of the students of Central Middle School. And the reason why I was sort of compelled to come up at this particular point is the whole purpose of all of this really is to ensure that our students have access to everything that they should through our PE curriculum and through our interscholastic sports. I'm concerned about losing a full-size baseball field because we do have a baseball team at Central, as does Eastern and as does Western. And our team the reason why perhaps it wasn't used last year was because it always had water on it. So they literally did not get on our field once last year and had to practice less than the other teams and play at other locations and as a result, we're at a disadvantage. You know, while we consider weighing all the options, I did just want to make sure that we discussed that while the softball field is there, that's great. Losing a full-size baseball field would have a direct impact on Central Middle School interscholastic athletics. It's not going to have a big impact at all really on the PE curriculum, but for that competitive sports team it would.
Ms. Olson, Mr. Kelly, I don't know if you had any. Ms. Olson.
Sure, thank you. Well, I was also cheering. I think I had myself on mute. I was going, woohoo, when I heard about the soil. So I second that. Because it's rare that we have a bunch of candidates, so that's a big victory for Greenwich Public. And I also just wanted to thank Tom Healy for coming up, and also just all the thought that went to this. Still a lot to think about. I think in terms of the three options. And I know that the town probably has a lot to weigh on as wellness, and there's a lot of stakeholders that have a lot to say. So I think for now we have a lot. There's still a lot to ruminate on about all this. But thank you for all the work, and thank you for what you've done thus far.
Thank you. I'll say from my perspective, I think having been through this last time, I'm not interested in crumb rubber or probably any rubber product at that point. We've been down that road. I guess this is for Kathleen and Dan. Years ago, I know Parks and Rec had actually looked at our fields and had a plan to turf all of our fields without ever coming to the Board of Ed. I don't know if it's come up in the discussion that's been going on about townwide field usage, or whether they've given any input into this process around Central, but it would be very good to understand their perspective, because they are the secondary users of the field. The primary users are the students in the school, and that's probably got to drive our decision more than anything else. But I think we should take the view of Parks and Rec into consideration.
They are very much in favor of this.
Okay, guess that answers that question.
Could I just ask one thing?
I'm sorry, we're not taking public comment. We took it, no, we took it earlier. Mr. Sherr, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Sorry.
Yep, Mr. Hill. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
You have to come
Ms.
up
James,
to the
come
mic.
on up.
I asked her to come because she lives in every day. So.
Got it. No, that's fine. Ms. James, come on up.
Nancy James, Central Middle School Physical Education and Athletic Director. The time frame that we're supposed to be on the field for the grass to grow and stay fresh and there, our PE classes with optimal weather conditions, our PE classes in fall sports programs max out 25 hours in a week. So we bring in the youth programs every afternoon for another 2 hours, and games and activities on the weekends by the youth programs, which is probably about 4 hours Saturday, 4 hours Sunday. We're way over the 25 hours that is suggested for grass use. We run out of grass by early October at this point, so we play on a dirt field. It's very hard to maintain grass. Even bringing in sod or digging everything up, the grass most likely would not survive through the fall with the amount of use that our field gets. That was it.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Stowe.
Thank you for saying that. I have to say that we celebrated at the beginning of this evening physical education, and she raises an excellent point, and this is where I'll make a personal plug. I have a child at Central Middle School who has spent more time playing on the tennis courts, not tennis, but every other sport, because there are really no fields that are usable. So thank you for adding that.
Mr. Sherr.
My question was about what's there now, right? Because if I recall, it surprised me on the 3-field option, right? What surprised me was the amount of space it consumes versus what's there now. Because the way that I see that field right now, if I'm not wrong, is in one far corner is a full-size ball field, in another corner is a youth field.
Softball.
Right.
Yep.
Then the outfield for both of those fields is effectively where football and other things are played right now. And then kind of beyond that in the corner, if you're facing north looking to the left, there's almost room for another field there, a smaller field that's tucked up against the where it's kind of like a berm, right? It's a hill, I guess. And this drawing essentially consumes that entire space with 3 fields. So I was having trouble visualizing, is it that these fields are substantially larger than the ones that are there, or what? How did that wind up consuming all that space?
Well, what we're showing is, a regulation outfields for both the baseball and softball. So
Is that not what's there now?
well, there is no delineation now. That's the thing. There's no
I wonder if
delineation.
does it fit though?
Yeah, they fit, and
Okay.
even with if you're looking at option 2 or option 1 where it's all green, baseball could still go back up in the north corner. What we're trying to do is get it to the ideal orientation,
Yes,
east
absolutely.
northeast,
Yeah.
but obviously create some overlap. And we are, for the multi-purpose field, we are showing the largest footprint, which is a CIAC-sized National Federation High School soccer field.
Right.
So
okay.
a full-size soccer field, which then can accommodate any other sport within it. And that's not to say that multiple, say, U12, U10 soccer fields could be configured where you have 2 or 3 smaller fields, especially under the synthetic turf. If you're using a portable mound for baseball, no matter how it's lined or striped, it's going to be one level plane and all the same material. So then you can put multiple fields over this expansive green area. So
Yeah, because
that's-
this was the original. You may not know this. This was the original proposal from Parks and Rec, which is just turf every possible square inch you could turf, and then by the way, just use the space for multi-use, right?
Yeah.
Right, which is optimal if you're okay with turf. So, but. And then it fits to a different question that I have, which is, Tony, I'm really interested in the programmatic here. This is how I think about this, and I'm really not sure I have that answer. I really want to see what is not what Central Middle School wants, okay? What I really want to know is, what is our athletic program, PE, and middle school sports for all middle schools. So what's the standard for all of that, right? And then, first and foremost, this is where I deviate a little bit, I'm worried about building what's necessary to support that programmatically. Then once I have that answer, I would be interested in layering in other uses, okay? If, for example, once we have our program nailed down, because that's our primary responsibility, then as an example, Greenwich Youth Football League and others that have different needs, which by the way, that program tends to be, I guess, K3 up, not K3, 3rd grade and up. There's also youth lacrosse, there's different uses. But I want to start, for me, the way I have to process this is I want to know what we need programmatically, not what somebody would like to have. And then I can figure out, okay, which users in town can this thing wind up supporting, and where am I making trade-offs? The last thing, Tony, that I asked before, and I didn't get an answer to, but I need that answer to make this, is what other uses in Greenwich Public Schools is this field potentially going to support? As an example, we started down this road of using this as a potential practice field when we needed some pressure taken off at the high school, okay? High school said, I need new fields right away. All of a sudden, it was, okay, well, we can give you this field, but it's on grass. And instead of them saying, I won't play on that for a good reason, the need vaporized. Okay, so I can't, as a board member, I can't make decisions that way. I need better information and data that's based upon what it is we're trying to support, so then we know whether this in fact fits. I don't know how to evaluate. I know how I feel about grass versus turf. I'm probably maybe alone on this board. I prefer grass. Okay. But if we go down this other road and is it this plan with 3 fields, or is it the plan with 2 fields with the little bleacher thing? The only way I can evaluate that is if I fully understand what our programmatic needs are. So, and maybe you guys collected all that, or maybe you didn't.
Well, I think actually Mr. Healy is prepared to answer that question.
Well, and I will say too, we were provided use data and, summarizing.
Yeah, current use data, right?
Current use data,
Right.
just summarizing some of what was said already today. It sounds like they need 25 hours of use on their field, and then other programs need more, so just natural grass inherently isn't supporting that.
Yeah, no, I know that part.
Baseball
Right.
not being able to play, but that quantified in more detail, I think is what you're asking for, some of that data.
Yeah, because the way we're going to do this thing is, the first thing is I have to do it for the middle school. Great. Tell me the list of sports, and I want to know that all those sports are supported by a field configuration, right? So that's kind of one, programmatic. Not what would people like our sports to be, or by the way, is there like, town baseball that would like to have it? But I'm trying to break it down into, I want to start with meets minimum. Meets minimum is Greenwich Public Schools middle school sports program consistent across all schools. That's for me the first question, right? And then you have, then you build from there, I guess is how I'm thinking about this.
So I can try to address that for you. So beyond the PE, which is 6 periods out of the
Right.
school day, 45-minute periods.
Right.
So in our competitive sports programs, we have in the fall, we have a girls soccer team,
Mhm.
we have a boys A and B soccer team, and we have a field hockey team that all use the fields during our fall sports season. There's also volleyball, but that's obviously in the gym. So those 4 programs are running each afternoon. They practice or play games 4 days out of the week. Wednesdays are the only days that they do not use those fields. Then in the winter, we're doing basketball inside, and then in the spring, we have boys baseball, we have girls softball, and we have co-ed track and field, which are all also using the fields 4 days a week, except for Wednesdays after school.
No lacrosse, that's gone.
No
Football's
competitive-
gone.
Correct.
We used to have football in middle schools.
Correct.
That's
We
gone.
have flag football intramurals, so just within this, just Central Middle School students playing against Central Middle School students. We run that. So there's an intramural program as well that we run, and flag football is one of those sports.
Okay, and soccer is U14?
It's, I guess it would be considered that. We have an A and a B team for
Yeah,
the,
but
for
do
the
you know-
boys. So it's basically, you have our oldest students are 14 turning 15,
Yeah, well,
but that's in the
they're
fall,
one of
so that's
these-
probably
they're
13,
one of these
14.
tranche things, right? You can be age, but it's
Right.
cute.
Right.
No, I'm on the middle school. So my question really is the field there was a regulation soccer field, but do you know if a soccer field for U10, U12, and U14 is different than U16, U18? Is it the same?
There's ranges for all those classifications. I
Okay.
don't know them off the top of my head.
And this one is this one's full blown for like high school varsity, right?
This is correct.
Right. What's shown here, but obviously we
Yeah.
can adapt it.
But
Okay.
again, it's just showing the biggest footprint that they can accommodate.
So what's interesting though, if you go and you look at the Google Earth view of all 3 of the middle schools, Western's the only school that's got delineated fields, basically due to the geography. So there's a separate baseball field apart from a multi-purpose field. Eastern looks a lot like what you see for Central, which is 2 ball fields and space in the middle, which would be the outfield for the ball fields, where the multi-purpose happens. So you can't have a baseball game going on at the same time there's a soccer game going on. It's one of the challenges of the field insertion.
We talk a lot about equity, making sure that all of our students have the same thing. So it is important that each of the schools, if one school has a full-size baseball field, all of them do. If one of our middle schools has a full-size soccer field, that all of them do. All of the students should have the same opportunity to play in the same space. And to me, that was why I was asking about how much we lose based on different plans. And ultimately, student safety is paramount. That comes first, truly. And I've seen what happens when we have fields that are wet and kids are slipping around. So to me, that's sort of key. We've gotten rid of plastic bags. We certainly shouldn't probably have plastic fields, which is I think what Peter had said, Francine, about no crumb rubber. So I know you were saying the sand feels a little harder, that you put the mat underneath. What is the over-under? Like, what are most schools in Connecticut and Fairfield County tending to move towards?
Probably in Fairfield County, again, we just went through this exercise in Westport, and they passed a referendum saying no crumb rubber, but then they ended up going with the thermoplastic elastomer, the TPE infill, which is no, yours is the coated sand. I believe Greenwich Academy went with TPE on one of their fields. So we are seeing some institutions in municipalities go with the TPE. A couple went with organic over the past couple of years, the coconut mix. And then, everyone's happy with their product at the end. And then we've done plenty of replacements recently. I don't know any in Fairfield County that went stuck with crumb rubber on their replacements, but there are places still doing that. So there's no real favorite product right now.
But I mean, are the majority of schools moving towards a synthetic type of carpet, or are most of them staying with a natural grass field?
Now, if they don't have the field capacity to maintain healthy natural grass, we need one synthetic. They're coming back now saying we need our second synthetic field. And then the only ones who have their synthetic and then have their premier natural grass fields that can rest a week at a time while the synthetic's being used. And as everyone knows, there just aren't that many places with that much space.
I think Peter had the same question you have. So basically you're saying they may put in one synthetic field, keep a natural grass. What's basically the standard of use that they can, I don't know a better way to word it. But.
Use of which one? The synthetic?
Right. Right. What's the true tolerance? How long can that field be in use before they say, okay, we can't maintain it anymore?
With proper maintenance, all these fields come with a standard 8-year warranty. We're starting to see the industry go to 10 years because the product's becoming more durable. But with lighting, I've seen fields used for 14 years nonstop.
Sorry, we didn't ask the right question. I didn't ask the right question. The question is, at what level of use can a grass field tolerate?
So about 20 to 25 hours of use a week.
And you're saying, how's that typically broken down? Is it a 7-day or 5-day?
That would be 7 days, how it's looked at, but we know it's more going to be a 5-day use period.
So that's really 5 hours a day.
And that's not saturated conditions.
Sure, of course not.
Yeah. Right. So the minute you get some weather, you have to.
So you're saying if I want to use a field more than 5 hours a day, I'm pushing my luck with.
It's going to be tough. You're going to have to put more maintenance into it, and to help it recover faster.
How do you do that?
Well, you can aerate the ground to reduce compaction. Compaction is really what you're dealing with, a living organism that you're stomping on nonstop, and if you don't give it a chance to heal, it's going to die off. And then also the moisture, soil compaction is your biggest enemy. You can put grass seed down all day on dense soil, and it's not going to grow.
Here's my other question. Can you talk about with grass the issue between using synthetic fertilizers versus organic fertilizer? I mean, what we've done in this town, let me just ask the question more straight, right? Here's where we are in this town, right? We have grass fields. We have them everywhere. We have way more grass than we do turf, okay? The town does not prefer turf, right? But then on top of that, what we've done is said, no, I want organic, effectively organic, you know, maintenance products. Well, guess what happens when you land in that place? Okay, you spit on our fields and you can't use them. So there has to be a series of trade-offs here. I mean, it's wonderful to say I want to do it this way, and I want it to be all organic, and that's a wonderful world. But if we wind up in a place where then we can't really do youth sports, it's not really very useful. So but you know, we're dealing with the sets of trade-offs, right? But it's clear to me, just if I'm listening to the community at all, you know, other than those people whose kids are serious athletes, right? They're going to rotate towards natural things if possible, right? But then there's this hard part of making the decision. Somebody's not going to be happy. That's just going to be the way it's going to be. But the question is how can we be more towards this end, right, of things that are natural and organic, but still meet the needs that we have to support youth sports? Because that's the other value we have here. We're a serious community about youth sports for a whole bunch of different reasons. You know, it builds character, it does a whole bunch of different things for us, healthy kids, you know, all the rest of it. Yeah. So we're trying to, where's that balance point based on your experience?
Well, I've seen clients successfully maintain natural grass fields with organic practices. There's much more attention required, much more higher costs of maintenance. And then the ones that have successfully done it, they also have multiple synthetic turf fields to handle the brunt of the workload. So again, it's one of those space and it's tricky.
What you're really saying is they wind up with a mix and match.
It's a mix and match.
You have to be in mix and match if you want to support a vigorous kids sports program.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get to, it's unreasonable to think you can get to a place where you can, unless you've just got endless land, where you can have...
Or money, or endless pockets.
Well, ours are pretty deep, but, okay.
Yeah, I know.
All right, Ms. Kowalski, then Mr. Kelly.
Well, I actually think Peter asked a couple of my questions. But just to clarify, so even if you do a grass field and it's properly aerated and taken care of, its maximum use for a week is 25 hours?
It's a rule of thumb, yeah, but that's typically industry is what we say is about 20 to 25 hours of use is the norm. And so we kind of say that one synthetic turf field is equal to 3 natural grass fields. That's kind of where the math falls.
And does Greenwich have the infrastructure to maintain properly grass fields, like to handle the aeration and all the seeding, and you gotta take the lawn? Do we have that capability?
I mean, maybe because you've been on the feasibility kit for a while with them.
Dan and I are getting to know a lot of the capabilities of the Parks and Recs department, and this is the analysis that's being done right now. That's why I feel like we're asking you a lot of questions that is sort of being conducted through a feasibility town-wide study that the BET is funding for us to have a sort of a look from a town perspective with the Board of Ed. And I think that we look at, Dan, what do we have, 64 fields in the town, 6 are turfed, right? 64 plus 6.
That are owned and managed by the town.
Right. So it's a balance. And to your original point, but that's what this study that the BET has funded and that we just hired, and I gave a committee update at the beginning on, is what we're looking at. I mean, we're looking at supply and demand for the town. We're looking at which sports are growing, projections, all of that stuff, and therefore, will we need more rugby fields? Will we need fewer baseball fields? Apparently baseball is declining, like who knew? You know, so all of this stuff we're going to analyze, and hopefully we'll have an answer from a town-wide perspective. But that's where it gets back to your point originally, Peter, is what does Central Middle School need right now? And what's the program need? They need a baseball field, right? They need a softball field. They need a multi-sport playing surface. And that's, I guess, the analysis that's ahead in front of us.
So I just have one more question. and I think Kathleen asked this before, a breakdown of like expenses, right? So we have the initial costs, but then a breakdown of maintenance costs. Is it something you can provide?
It's something we've done before, sure.
Sure.
Yeah,
So I think it would be interesting to see what the maintenance costs are for each of these three, particularly, and then, you know, what it's going to cost to replace a turf field in the 8 to 10 years I think you projected, and what that looks like. I think those factors need to weigh in. One last one. How long would it take you to get us that?
Well, we'll have to talk, but we can turn something around pretty quick. That's why I tried to give a quick, overview of the trade-off in costs today, because I can provide that. But we can probably prepare something definitely more detailed for that. We need to know some costs from the town about current maintenance costs and information such as that.
Just one comment. I believe the question was asked before about what the other towns do and what the other schools do after coaching for 10 years, 15 games a season. That's about 150 games in local games anyway. We've never played on a grass field, so everything's turf.
For the board, I think there's still a lot of questions about this. We have to figure out the timing of when and how we'd be ready to take this up potentially as an action item. Because I think directionally, we're going to need to give some direction, because that affects our budget ask. We're going to get to our capital budget tonight. We've got basically the plug number in there that would account for the most expensive, but allow us to scale to the least expensive. But by the time we get to meeting with the BET, I think we're going to need to make a decision. So we've got a little bit of time. We can put this on our January meeting as a discussion item if we need to. We can put it as an action item and not take action that night if we're not ready. I'm open to possibilities. Mr. Sheriff.
Are we on track to, let me ask the question, right? I agree, we're putting in the budgets, proposing the budget zones. Are we on track to start a project? You said a project would need to start in May. Are we on? No, May 31st, right? Because you need you need us off it like as soon as possible.
May of next year would be nice. May of 20. It would be to start the work so they would begin May of the following school year. It's like 16 months out.
Okay, that was my whole point, right? So why are we even requesting the money?
Because we need it starting July 1 to be able to start the work in May. You'd have to come up with a complete 100%
You're making the
design.
argument we need all the money to start. Yeah, fine. Okay.
You actually have to be able to bid.
But it's a year, it's to your point, 16 months out from now.
But we need it in that
I get that part. Okay.
And I'm only presuming the BET will want some certainty. We're going in with a large number. That may not be the number we need. We need to give them an indication where we're going. So,
last one was, we talked about future-proof. Did someone talk to you about this? Future-proof conduit?
No.
Conduit for the potential for electrical or IT out on the fields that needs to be added into the estimate?
Oh, okay. That's not a problem.
Okay. Because I think the way you propose this, right, there's new drainage anyway, regardless of what we do, right?
No, we always advise putting as much future infrastructure in for whatever it may be when the ground's open. When the trench is the expensive part, the conduit's cheaper.
Okay.
Yeah, not a problem.
okay, I think we can talk about this when we get to agenda planning, but I think the idea is we can put it on as an action item for the January meeting, get questions into the superintendent. We can have a discussion in January without taking action if we want to go down that road, but we'll need to figure out what that timing is. We obviously can reach out to the BET. We've got 2 members here listening, so we can have a discussion with them about that as well. Mr. Sheriff.
It just popped in my head. Is it possible to get an estimate, a rough estimate? This is going to be strange. A rough estimate that says, so it's 2 million or whatever. If I want to put in kind of turf it, that was the one with half turf, half grass. what, yeah, I forget what it is. Here's my question. Is there an option here? I'd love to know what the option is if we put in grass, and let's say 3 years from now, you can't maintain it, it's a disaster, so on and so forth, right? Then you would just presumably peel off the top layer and then put down turf. You understand what I'm saying? You don't have to dig, you have to dig up the whole thing all over again?
No, actually, we just went through this at Greens Farms Academy where they had some engineered grass fields, and they've been in the ground for about 6 years, but because they had some drainage already under the ground, we were able to utilize that. So it is feasible. When you read some of these articles out there, the costs, you put synthetic turf in, and what's the cost to rip it out and put natural grass in, or vice versa.
Yeah, I was going that way. I was going that if we tried grass and then we find out that we're failing because we can't maintain it.
Yeah, so
at the level of maintenance required to meet the 25 hours.
You could design a natural grass field that has similar infrastructure in it that could be reutilized if you went to turf. That is a possibility. It's not
recommended.
Well, it's not that it's not recommended. It's you're paying more overall.
Yeah, I understand that.
Is it feasible? Absolutely.
I'd love to know if there's a rough number for that. Anyway, talk to Dan and you guys.
We'll talk about it for sure. No problem.
And any other questions on this? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Glad we finally were to hear this. With that, we're going to turn to our action. Okay, so our action items, the first action item is our proposed fiscal year 21 operating budget. So recognize Ms. Steele, make your motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the revised proposal fiscal year 21 operating budget in the amount of $166,631,476 as presented.
Is there a second? Ms. Downey? Discussion, Ms. Steele, if you want to.
Like I said, we talked a lot about this at our finance meeting. We had a couple meetings in between our last board meeting to kind of just make sure that we were on board with many of the changes that Tony was good enough to make. I mean, look, I think the sentiment in that meeting, please add, is that it's getting more difficult every year to sort of hit this 2% guideline that we've been given. But I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again, we're investing in our teachers with a 2.9% increase. So we're sort of putting our money behind the most important people. And this is something I can get comfortable with. I know it's tough, but I am happy to sort of move forward with this. I guess we're short of $13, but otherwise, I think we're on the BET guideline.
We're going to collect the $13. So I want to thank the budget committee. I want to thank Dr. Jones. I want to thank the administrators who basically rolled up their sleeves, went back to work, and found this. So basically, we're coming in at the 2% of the BET guidelines. You've managed to do it in a way that limits any effect on teaching and learning in the classroom. But I don't want it lost that last year when we made cuts to our budget to get to guidelines, we basically took substantial cuts to our curriculum development and to our professional development, two of the big levers for increasing student achievement. Those are not back where they were. I think it'll probably be a very long time before we ever get back where they were. But we are continuing to sustain those cuts, and they will have an effect. And every cut we make will potentially have an effect on the classroom. At the same time, we're asking you to solve a staffing issue at one of our middle schools that needs to be resolved. At the same time, I will continue to beat the drum for social workers, that we will find other things that we would like to do that we are basically unable to do within the confines of a budget that's limited in nature. Some of that's on us. We will continue to look for these efficiencies. At some point, you've squeezed all the life out of it. Some of it is we look at the enrollment projections over time, and if there is a decrease in students in an appreciable way, we need to look at how we're utilizing our staff across buildings, where the loss of students might be, and that may enable some change for us as well. But it's hard work. This is your first swing at it. Sean joined at just the right time. You got here when all the hard work was done, so good on you. Next year, you're going to be rolling your sleeves up, and honestly, you took a great approach to looking at lines and what was the actual 3-year spend. I wish we would do that with the entirety of our budget. If we could do a zero-based budget, please go do it. I mean, really start to do it. I looked at the program reviews again today. They're a helpful guide. Where are we having the most impact with our students? Where should we be spending our money? As Kathleen has said time and time again, we've put that money into teachers. We're going to keep doing that. That is the biggest driver for achievement for our students. But at some point, we're going to hit a place where we're not going to be able to continue finding these cuts. So I don't know. At some point, something's got to change. Mr. Chair.
I have a question, Dr. Jones. In that I'm comfortable that this is the envelope that we're approving. But of course, we don't necessarily have in front of us all of the, we've talked a lot about reallocating money within the budget between departments, and I don't think we have a final of that. And I guess what I'm really trying to understand is, before we present the total to the BET, presumably that's going to get cleaned up. And here's the items that I have on my list, and I guess I just want to know that they are there will be adjustments made between now and when this is finally presented to the BET based on our approval. Resolving inequities in staff at Eastern Middle School. I presume that's going to be addressed by the time we have to actually send forward the cost centers and all the rest of it to the and reallocation staff. Any staff reallocations to the high school, right? Because we have issues there. I know there were a set of issues of things that you were going to look at. I guess I'm just trying to get clear that when we approve this now, it is part of your management process to follow up on those are the things that we've discussed that the board has directed over the past month and a half in terms of concerns in the budget.
Yeah, I'm not sure, oh goodness. I'm not sure that, depending on the timing, because in my head I just don't know how many weeks we're talking about from now. But it takes a while for us to really look at what staff we're going to mobilize where, and there are a lot of confidential conversations that happen and meeting with people. So whether we will be able to publicly say, here's how we're going to solve the problem, we've made a commitment that we're going to make sure Eastern has help next year, and we're going to solve that. The only thing that you would, these line items actually that are shown on this sheet will be, we know exactly where they are in the budget. So those are, so that's not going to be difficult to state.
I was just saying also, because I know our budget also is kind of set, it's on 2 axes, right? It's on program, people, head count, supplies, so on and so forth lines, and then they're allocated by building. And those buildings all have different cost centers to them. So I guess, I don't know what the timing is. I didn't mean to get caught up on the timing, but I just wanted to be clear that those items that we've discussed over the past 6 months are going to wind up being addressed before this budget is fully deployed starting July 1.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Diana,
Just wanted to thank you, Dr. Jones, for really rolling up your sleeves, coming in and having to deal with what I'm sure is not an easy task to go through. But I do look forward to, like as Peter said, I'm sure as you gain more knowledge and are more comfortable with where the allocations need to be, I'm sure you will make the right decisions, keep us informed. So within the confines of the numbers, so it's kind of your starting point.
I was also going to say, thank you for walking us through this budget process, for outlining it so nicely so that it was very easy for us to really dig in, and thank you for finding, areas that you could, where we could make cuts to hit our 2% guideline. Much like Mr. Bernstein said, last year we made cuts that have not come back, that will at some point affect our students. And it is something that we really do need to consider moving forward, how much innovation and change and that we want to make, and how much we can sustain these sorts of cuts in our budget in certain areas. As long as this is something that you feel is tenable for this year, that you feel that this will meet the needs of our students and our staff, and it gives our students what they need to, to be educated at the highest levels, and our staff the support that they need, then I don't think I have any more questions.
All right, Ms. Olson, did you want to add anything?
In terms of the budget that affects the cuts that were made that have not come back, I absolutely second what was just said, because I think we need to look also at some of our roles in leadership and evaluate, particularly special education.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, I'm going to call the question. The motion on the table is to approve the revised proposed fiscal year 21 operating budget of $1,636,631,476 as presented. All those in favor? That passes unanimously 8-0. Thank you very much. And we will move on to our capital budget. Yep, Ms. Stowe.
I'd like to put forth a motion that we approve the revised proposed fiscal year 21 capital budget of $32,155,000 as presented.
Is there a second? Ms. Downey. Discussion, Ms. Stowe.
It has Western in it. So that's what I was going to say. It seems like a big headline number, and I know we worked a lot on this at the Finance Committee or the Budget Committee, whatever it's called. But we went, first of all, you did a wonderful job sharpening your pencil, and we kept getting new information. So, for example, Central, right, that came down because we had a better number. And in fact, this has the highest number with maybe a little bit of shy of the 8% design fee, as he mentioned. And then it has the Cardinal Field revised number, right? Because you sharpen your pencil, we kind of have a sense for what that's going to cost us. You reduced the Greenwich High School amount because we're just going to look at the security entry. So a lot of things change at Old Greenwich. You had more information to reduce that. But the big headline number in there is the Western Middle School number. And so I kind of want to look at this as a $23.6 million number on a pro forma basis is how I'd like to sell it. But because that's what we know. But I think that as a board, please step in. I think we've all signaled that Western is very important to us, and so that's the amount that we're comfortable putting forth. But I kind of look at it as a 23.6 plus 8.5.
Mr. Sheriff.
So just by way of confirmation, was the original capital budget for maintenance as in this book, plus what we went over in the budget committee, and I just wanted to reconfirm, right? This is the additional money projected to complete the Cardinal 2 that would be necessary to do the revised Cardinal Field project as proposed by the committee. It's to create a very large reserve for Western Middle School fields, right? Upwards of, it'll round that out to $10 million, right? And it includes Central Middle School. So it's those three large projects requested fully funded, and it'll be up to the BET to decide whether or not they want to, how they want to manage that money. But this is very clearly us signaling that these three things, in addition to the execution on plan of our capital program, continues.
Let me just remind the board to make a good point, Peter. It's actually not just the BET. Our capital budget will actually pass through the first selectman before it goes to the BET and basically get mixed with the town capital budget. The first selectman has the opportunity to change the capital budget. Typically, it has not come back to us. We've had one instance in the 6 years I've been on where they've come back to us about a change, but otherwise they have that ability to make that change. I would hope they wouldn't, that we would have the opportunity to have the discussion with BET. Specifically, Western is a discussion I think we all need to have. So I think this is the right place to land.
Right, but by custom, the selectman has always been the aggregator. By custom, they have taken our budget proposal and passed that through to the finance authority. as opposed to trying to exercise oversight and revision of schools' capital budgets. It's really, you know, and I realize there have been a situation where prior first selectmen attempted to do that, but I imagine that the current wouldn't do that, would leave that question to the finance board.
I hope so. I think it was 2 years ago that they put in field 6 and 7 for a replacement that we did not originally anticipate. I think we were looking at it in out years. But the good news is that money's there, and when we're allowed to do it, we're going to replace the field, we're going to replace the turf at 6 and 7. So in some ways it worked in our favor that time. Anyway, other discussion on the capital budget. Ms. Downey.
Okay, we heard from the people on the dishwasher issue. I just want to ask Dr. Jones, because you made a proposal, they've kind of made a different proposal. I just would like to hear your thought process on why one's the right way.
It's not necessarily why one is the right way. What we have right now from a committee is a committee proposal that has not been vetted by staff. So I can't sit before you today and say it's a proposal that we can support or that we're going to spend this money on. Perhaps over the coming months as we get a chance to evaluate it. I had a very long conversation with Palo Alto, the school that they were looking at as a model. I learned a lot just on a long phone call. So, you know, what's working well, what have been the challenges, what would be semi-applicable here or maybe not. We just haven't vetted it. So, you know, we have a lot of operational study to do to understand it.
So if we vote for the budget, there's always the opportunity for you to, like, as it's presented, because it's basically a greater capital outlay than what, I'm just trying to process-wise to understand. No, what we're voting on is more.
Yeah.
So if you chose to go, right.
But we can't say that because we have not ran the numbers. So, and I'll give you an example. So when I, was talking to Palo Alto, they believe they can't have cross-contamination with the food you're delivering and also dirty trays. So they actually run an extra truck in the afternoon. Maybe that wouldn't be an issue here, but there are lots of questions like that we have to go in and examine from an operational standpoint.
Mr. Chair.
But Tony, I just want to be on the record and hear clearly. You're committed to the proposal that we have and fully evaluating this alternate proposal, and then based upon that, making an operational decision on which one is I'm going to say it my way, the one that is the most sustainable and cost effective, right? Not one or the other, right? Balancing those two values, right? And you're going to fully evaluate this centralized proposal. We're not jumping ahead off to the races, go put them in every school, correct?
That's correct, I think, based on, what the board has said at our last meeting, but the timing of that, we're asking for money that was put in the budget in planning for dishwashers at every school. So if we're being asked to look at this proposal, which, cursory is what we're doing really right now, but it needs a deep dive, we could be going through the budget process asking for capital money that's sitting there, and until we have a decision, I'm sure that they wouldn't release it, for instance, if that makes sense. Because we need to be, I don't know how long it will take us to go in and calculate everything.
Yeah, I guess just what I was trying to ask is something even more, all that mechanics aside, right, I would hope I'm prepared to vote for this way to create the money as a budget placeholder, not because what I'm interested in is, I support, maybe I'm alone in this, but I support a full evaluation of this alternate, right? I think regardless of whether we have some people who are strongly, they have one view of the world, that's not why I'm doing that. I'm interested in doing it because anytime we expend capital like this, I want us to fully vet all the options, right? And it seems clearly there's an option that was on the table, which is put them everywhere, right? Which is great. okay? Then another option emerged I hadn't even thought about, and I'm too dumb to think about that. Someone smarter than me has to figure that out, but it's there. And I would hope we would give it the same level of diligence that we gave the one that landed in the first place. If that comes out on the other end and you come back and say, hey, I think the original was still the right thing to do, then, you know, that's a different conversation. I just hope we would I'm prepared to vote for it as long as we're committed to fully vetting it.
I think we're committed to fully vetting it, and really even the dishwashers at the school sites is somewhat of a slow process because it was one school at a time based off all the discussion last spring. So, I mean, I think we've already started vetting it, just starting to ask the questions about, you know, how much cubic feet do we have in the truck? What's our heaviest day? You know, when we are moving stuff around the district, are we sure that we have the cubic feet with 2 trucks to do it on any day? You know, one of the things I learned today when I had another conversation was looking at the heavy use days with trays, for instance. Pizza day is different than, you know, another day. So there's just all kinds of questions operationally. We need time, and with everybody that has different pieces, we need food service there who, you know, understand things that might be different from facilities, finance, our HR, looking at what sort of positions and contracts and there's just a lot to consider. So yes, it will take time, because we weren't prepared, you know, when we were putting the budget together.
Totally,
Yeah.
I understand that. But
just
we're committed to a full evaluation.
But here's the challenge, and I think there's a solution to it. Procedurally, capital money is not fungible. What you ask for is specific. It's what you get. You can only use it for what you get. So if we are asking for money for dishwashing, maybe it's dishwashing system, and the CIP sheet that's submitted to the town has to say, we are committed to sustainable dishwashing. We're evaluating the best way to do that. We know from the work that Dan did last year, it's not as easy in some schools as it is in others. And so that may rise to the level. The other challenge that I don't have the answer for, though, is the operating side, because there is going to be a cost, a heavier cost on the operating side. You're going to need human beings to actually do this. So whether you're adding runs to the trucks, whether you're adding people to do the actual washing and packing and rolling the carts on, you have to account for that. I know the committee has done a lot of legwork, and I'm sure you'll start there, but we've got to validate all of that. We have to talk to the health department. We're the Board of Ed. You guys are a committee advisory to the superintendent. You've done great research. Hand it all over, because now they're going to validate every little bit of it and basically try to build this out in a more formalized way. I just worry we're not going to have enough on the operating side, and we're basically going to strain to fit it in somewhere else when we've already got a tight budget. The capital, I think, is a solvable problem, but we've got to be thoughtful about how we do it and what we ask for, because if the signal is we have no idea what we're doing, when we get before the BET or when we go to the RTM, we're not going to get a lot of support for, you haven't figured it out yet? I'm not going to give you the money, because we have a history, whether it's earned and deserved or not, of asking for money and then not spending it for a very long time. And that's going to come back and bite us, and this may be that instance.
Peter, I agree with everything all that you said. I guess I have a little more confidence in Tony that the irony is not lost on me that we're finally seeing Central Middle School. That project for this feasibility was authorized, I don't even know how long ago, almost 24 months ago. Okay, so we had a little execution problem, right? We allocate money and then we don't do it. I'm thrilled we have Central Middle School before it. It seems to me we have another option, some people who've done some really fascinating and good work. Thank you to whoever did that. The team of 4 ladies, or whoever else did it, 4 women, whoever else did it, 4 people, whoever else did it. I just want to be sure that we're actually, I'm interested in having that option fully evaluated, because if it's a better option, if it's more sustainable, and it's better, then that's what I'd rather do, right? Because the world changes. I've been on the board a long time, right? Stuff we do at any particular time, over time you go, oh boy, why the hell did we ever do that? That was a bad idea. I've had that thought more than once. And, you know, this is because sometimes we don't always evaluate this stuff. All I'm asking is that the thing be openly and fairly evaluated. And I really want it done in a really scientific, kind of clean way. I have seen, and I'll just say it while I'm at it, I've seen analysis that winds up being skewed because someone in the staff has one preference for another. I'm going to count on you, Tony, to scrub all that out. Right? This is about the most sustainable option we can provide at the best cost. As much as I know this is not popular amongst stakeholders, job preservation in any particular school to me is not a part of that equation. So I want a pure, clean analysis of the options, and whichever one's the best option, I hope that's the one. I'm looking forward to that being the one we pursue.
And I might add, I really don't think there is a preference. I really don't one way or the other, simply because it's something new. It's a different direction. So it just needs due diligence.
Ms. Hirsch.
So if we have a line item that is for reusable wares and dishwashers, it's not specific saying that we're going to put them in every school or have this alternative option, is that something that we can do? Because you're saying it's not fungible once it goes into the capital budget. I'm just concerned that we're going to go before the BET, and I sat there many years listening to those 24 hours, two days worth of grilling, and have these questions asked that we're not going to be able to answer, and I don't want to go forward with no plan. That's my only concern. I think it's important that we vet both options, but I just want to make sure that we aren't putting it off another year.
The hearing was only 8 hours last year, thanks to friendly questioning. This year, we're hoping for the same. I think a lot of it is what we describe on the CIP sheet, how we're going about doing it. As we sit here today, we don't have all of the information vetted to be able to make a decision. I mean, Peter hit it on the head, right? We need it scrubbed. We need to be able to do an apples to apples comparison of all of the elements of it, and until we have that, I don't think we're able to make that final cut. However, I think as we describe it on the CIP sheet, there's the opportunity to describe what we're doing, and this work can be done concurrently. So hopefully by the time we get before the BET Budget Committee or before the full BET vote, we've got more certainty around it. Those sheets can be amended as necessary.
So as long as we just have something as a placeholder for reusable ware, that's good, because we're having a discussion again about an item that has not been presented publicly for public input, and that's, that's just our procedure. So I just want to make sure that we're following that too.
Other discussion? All right, so we'll call the question on the capital vote. So it's to approve the revised proposed fiscal year 21 capital budget of $32,155,000 is presented. All those in favor? That passes unanimously 8-0. Thank you, everyone. All right, next up is the proposed fiscal year 21 food services budget. So you're on a roll. You want to make a motion?
I'm getting good at reading these numbers. I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommended budget on the 2020-2021 $4,374,528 of ordinary expenses / $4,158,090 revenue food services budget.
For a second? Ms. Downey. All right, discussion. Dr. Jones, I don't know if you want to give any explanation here.
It's for food.
She's so good.
I'm hungry.
No, the only thing I would point out is there was text in the budget book on the contribution from general fund. So, and one of you had asked that question. If you go back to the 16-17, it was at 595,000. It's been going down. You'll notice next year it bumps back up a little bit again, and that has to do with the food cost for new menu planning, because some of the food items can cost more as we're working on the menu. So
that's a creature of our own creation then. Okay.
How much was the increase?
Basically, the town contribution will be about $200,000. We had been at about 5. They'd been working it down. This is a little bit higher. because of the,
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, tell me, last year the number contribution was what in the end? I thought we had gotten down to like 200, right? Sorry.
The fund balance at the end of the year was 54,000, and the contribution from general fund was 240. So that would have put it right around that 196.
Now we're going back up to.
Well, what's projected would be a fund balance of 41,000.
Right.
But this school year, 7,800, you'll see.
Okay, fine, never mind.
okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of approving the food services budget? Passes unanimously, 8-0, thank you. All right, we're on the financial and staffing report. Mr. O'Keefe, if you want to be tortured and come on down. Can we get a motion to accept the financial and staffing report? Mr. Scher? Mr. Scher's made the motion. Ms. Stowe, is there a second?
I second.
All right. All right, so Mr. O'Keefe, if you want to give us an update.
Thank you. There's not a lot of new news here, so I'll be brief, given the time. As far as staffing goes, there are a small net increase from GOSA and GEA, and as mentioned in previous months, there's an increase related to 3 new preschool classrooms, 2.7 FTE per classroom, total of 8.1. So essentially, that's the update for staffing. Sorry about that. Vacancy report, really not much new there, although the report does now show positions on hold for the first time. Purchasing report shows 4 contracts greater than $100,000, 3 of which are SPED related, and 1 related to the transportation contract with STA. The next chart is the general fund revenue, and simply just provides an update as of November 25th on a budget of $896,000. Year-to-date actuals at $771,000. Next chart is the general fund on a budget of $163.4 million. Our year-to-date expended is $49.1, encumbered $17 million, leaving an available balance of 59.5% of budget versus 56.1 in the prior year. The driver there is on a year-to-year basis, we have 5.4 FTEs less than we did in the prior year. On to the projection. We're currently projecting at this point to be on budget, although I must say that we do have some known and projected exposures in special ed, and we have already identified offsetting, some partially offsetting, and we're continuing to look for further offsets. Next chart of the grants. Chart just shows the status of the 1920 and 2021 grants, and you'll see on the chart that the Title I through Title V not yet received. So it's a big blank in that chart. School lunch, year-to-date revenue of $1.1 million, expense currently at $1.4, which is pretty typical for this time of year. A lot of startup expenses at the beginning of the year, and we typically catch up throughout the remainder of the year. And we're currently projecting to achieve budget. Capital. The charts show the open capital projects as of December 4th. I'm currently reviewing all of the capital projects, and with a huge focus on 2015, 2016, 2017 projects, with a view to closing out those projects and to return any unused funds as soon as possible. All right, I think that's it. Any questions?
Welcome aboard. So we greatly, this microphone's off, I don't know what happened. Closer to my face. All right, that's kind of great. As you're new, we actually welcome your input on this report. It's sort of been a work in progress. The capital report has been completely revamped. Dan and Lori, your predecessor, have done a great job in closing out previous projects, so I'm glad to hear you have an interest in doing that as well.
Very important to close out projects. You lose a lot of credibility when you maintain projects that the funds are just sitting there.
But I hope, to speak for myself, but the rest of the board can weigh in. If you have ideas on better ways to present this information to the board, information you think we should be getting that we're not, please speak up, share that. We're happy to have this updated.
I do have ideas.
Fantastic. Happy to hear that. All right. Questions, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor of accepting the financial and staffing report? Ms. Olson? Aye. Okay, great. Passes 8-0. Thank you.
Thank you for accepting it.
We appreciate it. The next one's all you, though. I want to note one oddity on the agenda. For whatever reason, budget transfers were listed as a written report. That's something that the board votes on. So we have a couple of options. One is to move it on our agenda, which we shouldn't. That's a no. We're going to take them up. That's what we do here. So we could actually vote to change it on our agenda and take action on it. Or we could take it up at our January meeting. These transfers typically have already taken place. We do have to present them to the BET, which is why we vote on them. Sean, maybe you want to add your 2 cents in. Yes, at this point it's a little odd to change our agenda, so we can take it up at the January meeting, but Mr. O'Keefe?
Just very briefly, there are a number of transfers, total 4 transfers, none of which require Board of Ed approval.
So while they may not require, because they're in the same line? Is that
Yes.
Okay, so they're not taking to cover from SIPL to move to special ed or?
Right, it's
Okay.
not crossing major object codes.
Okay, interesting.
Say again? It's information only.
Okay, well, that's good news, so we don't need to take that up. All right, so then we're at agenda planning. Just to bring it up to where we were from our last meeting, we took up fields tonight. We now have the meeting on January 7th for Cardinal Stadium. We moved the DLE update to January from tonight because we knew tonight would be a long meeting. The DLE, because we've had a DLE update recently and there was a lot of discussion about screen time. I don't know, is there board interested in hearing about the work they've been doing on screen time and how the devices are used in the classroom? Okay, because that was where I thought we might want to go, but I wanted to check with you. So Tony, that's input from several board members. All right, another thing would be to have a presentation on where HAMAV is on their STEM program. We would add that for January. We've added as a placeholder the new LEB certificate of occupancy and building acceptance. So I'm hoping we can accomplish that in January. And then Cardinal Stadium action was added. From tonight, I'm going to put a placeholder, Mr. Sheriff, for a strategic plan on January 30th. And then if you want to let us know the other dates, obviously the PD sessions that are there are open and available for strategic plan. I think that's about it, unless anybody, and Central Field, does anybody have a strong opinion about adding it as action or discussion for the January meeting? So.
All right, go ahead. I was just gonna say, if we could have the numbers by then, like per what we were discussing, then I think we could take it up for action and answer all the other questions you had. But I don't know, can they do that in that time?
I think, I'm not worried about us. I think what you have to do is we have to declare, you know, we have to let that thing run through. I would do, just for good measure, is I would not do it at the next meeting. I'd do it at the one after that. And what I would do at that next meeting is make call for public comment. So if anybody wants to come talk, there's a group of people who are really vocal about this, and just let them come in and say their piece, because we need to hear that. And I think it's bad form to, when you're taking public comment like that, I don't know why people didn't come tonight. I think they were probably doing it this way. They were probably like waiting to read the report, and then I would just, you know, but anyway, that's what I would do. But I don't have a strong
little bit of time, but I would say again, this is another one that we probably are going to need to take up before the BET votes on the budget, because we're going to get
well, they're not going to vote on the budget till in March, so
right. So we have a little bit of time, so we can.
I'd let people have comment and then take it up.
Yeah, so add it to the February, we would add to the February 20th meeting as an action item. And we can make sure the central PTA posts in there.
Wait a minute, we have a meeting when, 7th?
No, the 7th is for Cardinal Stadium. We have a meeting on January 16th. If they want to come for public comment, that's fine. What we would do is make sure that it's been sent out to the central community. They'll obviously share with neighbors, and then from there we can take it up in February. But you're right, it was on the agenda for tonight, but end of the year meetings are hard. We've heard that before. I made that comment before I was on the board. We would not even put it as discussion, because I think
people need to come and speak if they want to tell us about it.
Right, and then we could take it up.
By the time the 20th is, it's a vote, and you know, if they're hanging out, we just need to give them an opportunity for comment, however that works.
Because we can add it for discussion. If we add it for discussion, then we'll just do this again, right? But if you have questions that you want answered, especially around economics or other issues, I would say submit them to the superintendent so that she can be prepared to update us. Okay. I also wanted to note there was a request at the last meeting for the PD session on January 30th. We're planning to do an update on fields at GHS and Western. There's a question about whether that could be executive session. It really doesn't fall into any of the categories. Basically, we've been updating the public as to where we are, and I think and it would be after the public hearing?
GHS.
Oh yeah, there'll be a public hearing in GHS. Okay, and then there's also we talked about, sorry, go ahead, Peter.
Your question was an executive session. Is that thing subject, that's going to be the subject of potential litigation, right?
The fields? No, because we're at least for the high school and where we're trying to get for the middle school, we're trying to agree on an action plan with the state. So it's not litigation.
No, I know. Isn't there a bunch of people making noises about suing us if we didn't have the right plan? Maybe not. Okay, fine.
Not anything I'm aware of. So
no.
We are going to do we'll do a special education. First, we'll get some information on the seminar process that's been going on with members of the community, and then we will do an executive session. We were interested in out-of-district placements, settlements, and we'll have that executive session. The other thing we'll do is we'll add strategic planning onto that. So by then, Peter, I guess you would have a committee, at least one committee meeting, come to us with some of those big questions that you were asking.
And the executive session is confined to the board.
Session for special education would be the board, as well as the pupil services director, who would be able to answer the questions.
And then I hope we would hear, the other participant in that should be the town attorney.
No, they'll have an attorney, and then obviously Dr. Joe will do it as well.
Yeah, because so many of those settlements are managed, some of them managed outside, but all legal things are managed through the department. I think it's Abby who manages most of ours, but whatever. Yeah, okay.
All right, well, thank you so much. Mr. Kelly, is there a motion you wanted to make?
I'd like to make the motion to adjourn.
All right, I will second. Yeah, I think you got a second from everybody, but Mike will take your pick. All those in favor of adjourning? All right, we are unanimously adjourned.